Chapter 1269. The burial of heaven's words made Ji Tianqing's heart palpitate with excitement. The galaxy body refinement art, Kenshin's inherited secret art, a martial god-level divine art. After cultivating it, I can have the star divine body, be the best in my generation, and dominate the world. He muttered to himself as his eyes glowed with a bright light. Since there is such a heaven-sent opportunity, why wouldn't I dare to gamble? His eyes revealed a determined look, and he said in a solemn tone, "Burial of heaven, how should I cultivate this divine art?" The burial of heaven said in a low voice, "It's very simple. I will teach you the introductory formula of this divine art, and you will use your heart to comprehend it. If you can learn it, you will have to be placed in the sun-moon furnace, burn your body with the sun-moon divine fire, and refine your body like steel. Don't be afraid of the sun-moon divine fire destroying your body. You will have to rely on the galaxy body refinement art, use the sun-moon divine fire reasonably, and temper your body thousands of times to greatly increase your strength. If you can't cultivate this divine art, the heaven-mending orb can protect you, at least you won't lose your life." Ji Tianqing certainly understood this, and the heaven-mending orb was his biggest reliance. He nodded and said in a low voice, "Okay, there is no time to lose. Teach me the galaxy body refinement art now, and I will start cultivating as soon as possible." The burial of heaven didn't say anything more, and immediately taught him the introductory formula of the divine art. The galaxy is far and wide, and there are millions of stars. Step on the stars, all-encompassing. The sun and moon compete to shine on the three halls, and the stars shine brightly. I have the power of 8,000 stars, and I can step on the stars and set the universe. Ji Tianqing held his breath and listened attentively. After the burial of heaven finished speaking, he memorized the 1,000 words of the formula. He had a photographic memory, and his comprehension was extraordinary. He recited the introductory formula in his heart, and after 3 to 5 times, he memorized it word for word. Then, he closed his eyes and tried to figure out the meaning of the formula word by word. If he encountered some obscure parts, he would ask the burial of heaven for advice. The burial of heaven was refining the blade and the divine gold while guiding him in his cultivation. It was not difficult to multitask. After a short day, Ji Tianqing, with the help of the burial of heaven, figured out the meaning of the introductory spell. If it were an ordinary soul refinement realm cultivator, it would take them at least 30 to 50 years to comprehend it. In fact, most people would never be able to understand the meaning of the incantation. Ji Tianqing spent another 3 days on his own. Only after he had thoroughly comprehended the 1,000-word incantation did he try to cultivate it. He controlled the power of the heaven-mending orb to form a layer of white light shield, protecting his meridians and internal organs. Only the surface of his burnt flesh was exposed to the sun-moon divine fire, enduring the burning and torment. In the beginning, he hadn't been able to use the galaxy body refining art to temper his flesh and skin. It was to the extent that he was burned to an extremely miserable state. The skin and flesh on his entire body had been charred, and countless black ashes had fallen off. The incomparable pain caused him to be in so much pain that he almost couldn't stay calm. However, his martial arts heart was exceptionally firm. In order to increase his strength, he could endure all the pain and torment. With his strong willpower and perseverance, he actually managed to persevere. Within 2 days, after thousands of repeated attempts, he finally figured out the trick to cultivating the galaxy body refining art. When he cultivated the incantation, he could derive a mysterious power that could effectively protect his body and strengthen it in the sun-moon divine fire. He finally succeeded in mastering the introductory spell. Of course, he also paid a heavy price for this. The skin and flesh on the surface of his body had been burned to black ashes and scattered in the furnace. At this time, only the inner layer of his flesh, meridians, bones, and internal organs were left. He looked pitch black, very miserable and frightening. However, he saw the hope of success. His spirit was lifted, and he felt that the pain he had suffered before was worth it. Then, he began to cultivate the galaxy body refining art with all his might, using the sun-moon divine fire to temper his flesh, meridians, and bones. In just 5 days, he had tempered his flesh and blood into a dazzling golden color, reaching an incomparably tough level. His defense and strength had increased by 10 times. 12 days later, he had finished tempering his meridians. All of his meridians had turned dark silver and were as tough as a top-grade soul weapon. Then, he used the sun-moon divine fire to temper his bones. The process of tempering the body in cultivating the galaxy body refining art had a set of steps. First, he would temper the skin, then the flesh, meridians, and then the bones. The last step was to temper the internal organs with the sun-moon divine fire. Once the internal organs were all tempered, the star divine body would be completed. It would be incomparably tough from the inside to the outside, reaching the limit of a soul-refining realm expert. Unknowingly, 20 days passed. Ji Tianqing had finished tempering his bones. Every bone in his body was golden and contained a divine power that could resist the attack of a top-grade soul weapon. He was immersed in the excitement of his strength skyrocketing. He forgot himself and cultivated the divine technique. He didn't feel any pain, nor did he have any intention to stop. He wanted to continue tempering his internal organs and cultivate the divine technique in one go. At this time, Burial of Heaven and the Star Divine Gold had been refined for 20 days and finally fused a part of it. About half of the fist-sized divine gold essence had been refined. With the help of the sun-moon divine fire, it was fused into its sword body. This was despite the fact that the sword body that it had recondensed was still incomplete. However, the length of the broken sword had increased by 4 inches, reaching more than 2 feet. As long as the broken sword condensed a 3-inch long sword tip, it would be complete. Burial of Heaven stored the remaining divine gold essence into the sword world, saving it for the next time it repaired the sword body. Although the broken sword had become more complete after being repaired and refined, the power of the broken sword had more than doubled, and its quality had also increased by 1 level. Unfortunately, the broken sword had only reached the half-step primordial soul realm. In the end, it couldn't cross the threshold of the primordial soul realm and become a divine weapon. Burial of Heaven had long expected this result. It was very clear that in order to restore the broken sword to the primordial soul realm, not only did it need the star divine gold, it also needed 2 other top-notch materials. After completing the refinement, it wasn't in a hurry to leave. It still stayed in the sun-moon furnace. As it was being refined by the sun-moon divine fire, it continued to improve its power. At the same time, it was also looking after Ji Tianqing, who was cultivating, in case anything happened to him. Above the sun-moon furnace, the 1,000-meter-long black dragon was floating in the air. It looked down at the sun-moon furnace with a tired expression, and its eyes were filled with worry. Yun Yao, who was wearing a long white dress, stood on the black dragon's back as usual. Her long hair and white dress danced gently in the sea breeze. She stared at the whirlpool below without blinking, her eyes filled with worry and anxiety. After a long silence, she finally spoke. "Black Dragon, you stay here. I'm going to find Tianqing." The black dragon was shocked and quickly dissuaded her. "Miss Yun, don't be rash. You can't enter the sun-moon furnace without permission. Don't forget old Ji's instructions." Yin Yao said firmly, 20 days have passed. I've waited for 20 days. But Tianqing hasn't appeared. Even the sword of Burial of Heaven has disappeared. No matter what, I have to go down and see what's going on. If Tianqing is already dead, I'll accompany him to hell. Her expression was very firm, and her tone revealed her determination, leaving no room for doubt. The black dragon quickly flew away with her and persuaded her. "Miss Yun, I know that you've been worried about old Ji's safety for the past 20 days. You've been suffering every day. But you have to believe in old Ji. No matter how dangerous the sun-moon furnace is, he has the divine sword protecting him. How could he die so easily? Chapter 1270. However, Yinyao still had a glimmer of hope in her heart. For the past 20 days, she had been comforting herself. With Ji Tianqing's strength and powerful trump cards, he would be fine. However, Ji Tianqing still hadn't appeared. She couldn't wait any longer. No matter how the Black Dragon persuaded her, she insisted on entering the Sun and Moon furnace to check the situation herself. Swoosh! Her figure flashed and she flew into the sky, heading straight for the giant whirlpool. In the blink of an eye, she flew above the whirlpool and dived down without caring about her own safety. She wanted to rush into the Sun and Moon furnace. However, at this moment, a muffled rumbling sound came from the furnace. The golden sun at the bottom of the sea bloomed with dazzling golden light, becoming extremely dazzling. Accompanied by the muffled rumbling sound, the Sun and Moon furnace below the whirlpool actually emitted an earth-shattering gold and silver flame, rolling and surging violently. In a short while, the entrance to the whirlpool was sealed by the Sun and Moon divine fire, making it impossible for anyone to get close. Without a doubt, it was noon again. The Sun and Moon divine fire's power had reached its limit and exploded again. Yinyao was shocked. She had to stop flying and quickly leave the Sun and Moon furnace. For the past 20 days, she had seen the Sun and Moon furnace explode twice a day with her own eyes. She knew how terrifying the Sun and Moon divine fire's power was. Once she entered the whirlpool, she would instantly be burned to ashes by the Sun and Moon divine fire. She would die without leaving a trace. Moreover, the eruption of the Sun and Moon divine fire this time was completely different from the previous 20 days. Its power was even more terrifying. The dazzling gold and silver light rushed out of the whirlpool and rolled up a few giant fire dragons in the sky, wreaking havoc. The seawater in the whirlpool was evaporated by the terrifying heat. The water vapor was especially dazzling under the light of the fire. Yinyao saw this strange scene and became more and more anxious. The Black Dragon quickly flew over and carried her dozens of miles away, waiting in the sky. Yinyao made up her mind. After 2 hours, when the Sun and Moon divine fire's power dissipated, she would enter the furnace to find Ji Tianqing. At the same time, in the sea thousands of miles away from the Sun and Moon furnace, 3 white-haired old men were speeding over the sea, heading straight for the west. The old man in the lead wore a dark purple robe with stars and clouds embroidered on it. His sleeves were inlaid with gold, and his style was very simple and mysterious. His figure was thin, and he wore a jade crown on his head. His long hair hung loosely behind his head, and his entire body emitted the aura of a secluded expert. Moreover, he had white hair and a ruddy complexion. His eyes were bright and deep, and it was obvious that he was an ancestor-level figure. Following closely behind the purple-robed elder was a white-robed elder. This person was tall and sturdy. Even though his hair was white and his face was full of wrinkles, he still exuded a valiant and dignified aura. As for the third old man, he was a sloppy old man wearing a black robe with a stooped back. On the surface, this person looked no different from an ordinary old man in the secular world. But in reality, this person's entire body was emitting soul power fluctuations, indicating that he was also a soul-refining realm expert. As the 3 of them flew across the sea, they were also whispering to each other. The white-robed elder sized up the black-robed elder, and his expression was not very good. He said in a low voice, "Ji Wuxia, although we cultivate martial arts wholeheartedly and only talk about martial arts and martial arts, we don't care about appearances. But you were fine before. You were originally a big man with a dignified appearance, but now you've become an old man. What kind of scandal is this? Our Du Tian sect is an ancient sect that has been passed down for thousands of years. As the direct disciple of the sect master, how can you humiliate our sect?" The black-robed elder was Ji Wuxia. When he heard the white-robed elder speak of this matter, he was also filled with anger and resentment. "Third elder, do you think I want to become like this? I was also forced to do this. It's all that little bastard Ji Tianqing's fault. He hid his strength so well and was so terrifying. I was heavily injured by him, and even my physical body was destroyed. Only my soul escaped. I can't just rely on my soul to escape back to the sect, right? If I were to find a place to heal, it would take at least 100 years to recover. So, while I was escaping, I casually caught an old man in the Sky Origin realm and used our sect's ancient secret technique to seize his body. I'll use this body for now. After we deal with that brat Ji Tianqing, I'll return to the sect to heal and recover my physical body. The dissatisfaction in the third elder's eyes dissipated. He nodded and said, "That's good too. The most important thing now is to find Murongzheng as soon as possible and see how he is." Although Murongzheng has already left the sect and returned to Central State to take over the family's power, he is still the sect master's most valued disciple. If anything happens to him, the sect master will definitely fly into a rage. Ji Wuxia was silent and did not speak. His expression was somewhat unnatural. Although what the third elder said was the truth, he was still unhappy and jealous in his heart. At this moment, the purple-robed elder flying in front said with a dignified expression, "Wuxia, our sect has been living in seclusion in the returning ruins and has not come out for 1,000 years. We don't understand the situation in Central State. Now that something like this has happened, the sect master sent me and the third elder out to uphold justice for you and Murongzheng. Why don't you tell me about the cause of this matter and what exactly happened? What is the background and strength of that brat called Ji Tianqing?" Ji Wuxia was very respectful to the purple-robed elder. He quickly bowed and said, "Left Guardian, the cause of this matter was the enmity between Senior Brother Murong and Ji Tianqing. 2 months ago, Senior Brother Murong sent me a message and asked me to help him kill a brat called Ji Tianqing. Later, when I arrived at Central State, I specially investigated that brat and found out that he was a peerless genius who had risen in recent years. Not only was he the #1 genius of the human race, but he was also the #1 prodigy of the monarch residence. He reached the spirit refinement realm at the age of 20. Not only that, the emperor of the human imperial court also thought highly of him. Even when he destroyed the Duanmu family, he did not punish him. Because of many disputes and conflicts of interest, Ji Tianqing became enemies with the Murong family and killed Senior Brother Murong's son, Murong Lingfeng. Therefore, Senior Brother Murong vowed to kill Ji Tianqing for revenge. However, Ji Tianqing's strength was too strong, and he also had powerful trump cards. Senior Brother Murong wasn't completely confident, so he asked me to help and kill Ji Tianqing on the way. We did not expect that Ji Tianqing was such a monster. He was clearly only at the 3rd level of the spirit refinement realm, but after exchanging a few blows with me, he severely injured me and destroyed my body. The situation was critical and I could only run for my life. I could not care about Senior Brother Murong. After I took over his body and escaped danger, I sent him a message to ask about his situation. It was like a clay ox entering the sea and there was no reply. Chapter 1271. Ji Wuxia and the other 2 flew over the sea in a hurry. The 3 of them talked about Murongzheng for a bit, but they didn't come to a conclusion. After all, they couldn't contact Murongzheng, so they didn't know how he was doing right now. The most important thing right now was to get to the Central Plains as soon as possible and visit the Murong family. However, at this moment, Ji Wuxia accidentally saw a large flame appear in the sky to the northeast. He paused for a moment, then turned to look at the sea. He saw that there were gold and silver flames in the sky above the sea. He could vaguely see a few fire dragons flying in the sky. Not only that, but the sky around the flames also reflected a brilliant light. Ji Wuxia immediately frowned and said to the left protector and 3rd elder, "Left protector, 3rd elder, look over there. There seems to be something strange." The left protector and 3rd elder were worried about Murongzheng's safety, so they weren't interested in this. However, when they heard the shock in Ji Wuxia's voice, they subconsciously turned to look. When they saw the dazzling scene of flames, they all frowned, and a strange light flashed in their eyes. The two of them slowed down and stopped in the air above the sea. They looked towards the northeast and began to discuss in low voices. Look at the location and direction of the flames. It seems to be where the sun-moon furnace is. This place is 10,000 miles away from the sun-moon furnace. The flames should be coming from the sun-moon furnace. The heaven-vanishing sect was in the depths of the returning ruins of the East Sea. It was only 300,000 miles away, not far from the sun-moon furnace. In reality, when the heaven-vanishing sect was first established, the people of the heaven-vanishing sect knew about the sun-moon furnace. The people of the heaven-vanishing sect all knew that the sun-moon furnace was a divine tool that gathered the divine power of heaven and earth. It had extremely strange effects and was also a very dangerous forbidden ground. However, it was a pity that even the strongest people of the heaven-vanishing sect could only wander around the sun-moon furnace. They couldn't enter the furnace at all. 800 years ago, the previous sect master reached the 9th level of the spirit refinement realm and had the strength of a half-step into the primordial spirit realm. He decided to explore the sun-moon furnace. He wanted to unravel the mysteries of the sun-moon furnace. Perhaps it would bring about great opportunities for the heaven evasion sect. But in the end, he was only able to last an hour inside the cauldron before 2 of his high-grade soul armaments were burned away and he was on the verge of death. Ever since then, the Du Tian sect had forbidden anyone from exploring the sun-moon furnace unless they reached the primordial spirit realm. Otherwise, no one was allowed to enter the sun-moon cauldron. Even the sea around the cauldron was forbidden. In the past few hundred years, the disciples of the heaven evasion sect had been abiding by their ancestral teachings and no longer explored the sun-moon furnace. They rarely even approached it. However, everyone was curious about the mysterious sun-moon furnace. At this moment, Ji Wuxiao and the other 2 saw the flames near the sun-moon cauldron and their interest was piqued. After the 3 of them observed for a while, the 3rd elder said in a deep voice, "It's noon now. Every day at noon and midnight, the power of the sun-moon furnace will reach its strongest state. Even if the sun-moon furnace emits flames, it shouldn't be anything strange. We don't need to pay attention to it. What's important is to get down to business." Ji Wuxiao nodded in agreement, "That's right." Even the previous head of the Du Tian sect, who was so powerful, was unable to discover the secrets of the sun-moon furnace. Even if there is something strange about the sun-moon furnace and it hides some shocking treasure, we can't do anything about it. The 2 of them didn't have any thoughts of going to check the situation, but the left protector didn't want to leave. He frowned and thought for a while. Then he said in a serious tone, "Of course I know. It's noon now, when the sun-moon furnace is at its peak. But in the past few hundred years, the sun-moon furnace's power has exploded twice a day, but it never emitted flames that soared into the sky. We can see the sun-moon divine fire illuminating the sky from thousands of miles away. This has never happened before. I dare say that something must have happened to the sun-moon furnace. Or maybe, an expert entered the sun-moon furnace and caused the flames to soar into the sky." Hearing him say this, the 3rd elder and Ji Wuxiao were stunned. The 2 of them looked at each other, then turned to the left protector and asked, "Left protector, you mean?" The left protector squinted his eyes and said in a serious tone, "Since it's not far away, let's go and see what's going on. Even if I guess wrong and we don't find anything, it won't take much time." After saying this, the left protector flew towards the sun-moon furnace. The 3rd elder and Ji Wuxiao didn't dare to disobey him, so they didn't try to persuade him and quickly followed him. After about 2 hours, the 3 of them flew over thousands of miles above the sea and finally arrived near the sun-moon furnace. When they were still 100 miles away, the 3 of them saw 2 huge black shadows on the sea in front of them. Those were 2 mountains that were 10,000 meters tall, standing on the sea. Between the two mountains, there was a huge whirlpool with a radius of 100 miles. The dazzling sun-moon divine fire shot out from the whirlpool and shone high up in the sky. The area within a radius of 100 miles was illuminated by the fire, dazzling and dazzling. The air was filled with a high temperature, causing the water vapor on the sea to rise. However, as the three of them got closer to the sun-moon furnace, the fire in the sky gradually dissipated. It was already afternoon. The power of the sun-moon furnace had been unleashed, and the sun-moon divine fire was about to calm down. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Wuxia and the two of them flew across the sky and arrived above the sun-moon furnace after 100 breaths. The fire that covered the sky and the sun, as well as the huge fire dragons, all disappeared. The sun-moon furnace calmed down and returned to its normal state. Before the three of them could check the situation in the whirlpool and the furnace, they saw a huge figure that was 1,000 meters long floating in the sky near the whirlpool. It was a huge black dragon with a majestic body, and a lady in a white dress was standing on its back. Seeing this, the left protector, Wuxia and the two of them instantly stopped in mid-air and revealed strange expressions. I didn't guess wrong. Someone really did break into the sun-moon furnace. Ha ha ha, the left protector is really wise. Someone actually came here and rode on a huge dragon. That looks like a black dragon. Could it be an expert from the water race imperial court? No, there's a human lady on the black dragon's back. That black dragon looks like her pet. It shouldn't be an expert from the water race. That scene of fire shooting into the sky must have been caused by them. Could it be that they discovered the secret of the sun-moon furnace? The three of them discussed secretly. They were all surprised and pleasantly surprised. The left protector stared at the black dragon and the lady in the white dress for a moment and said in a low voice, "If it's a black dragon from the water race imperial court, our Heaven Ascension sect can't easily provoke it." Chapter 1272. The Sky Vanishing Sect was a hidden sect that had been passed down for 2,000 to 3,000 years. In a sense, it was not wrong to call it an ancient sect. However, this ancient sect was not a righteous sect and would never boast about being righteous and kind. The left protector observed for a while and saw that the black dragon and the woman in white were only at the first or second level of the soul refinement realm. After all, the black dragon was a rare and powerful flood dragon. It was much stronger than the spiritual beasts raised by the Sky Vanishing sect. If the left protector could capture a black dragon to be the sect's divine beast, it would be a great contribution to the sect. Swoosh! The left protector flew out first and charged towards the black dragon as fast as lightning. The third elder and Wuxia were also filled with anticipation. They smiled sinisterly and followed the left protector. The black dragon and Yunyao had already noticed the arrival of the three unfamiliar old men. They were on high alert. Yunyao knew that in the eastern sea's bottomless ruins, any unfamiliar strong cultivator could be an enemy. They could be even scarier than demons. Moreover, the three unfamiliar old men were very powerful. They were all at least at the 5th level of the soul refinement realm. They also had sinister smiles on their faces. If it was any other day, she would definitely ask the black dragon to leave immediately. She would not meet them face to face to avoid trouble and conflict. However, Ji Tianqing was still in the sun-moon furnace. How could she leave so easily? In the blink of an eye, the left protector, Wuxia, and the other two flew close to the black dragon and stopped. The three of them spread out and surrounded the black dragon. Their eyes were filled with greed. Wuxia sized up the black dragon a few times before his gaze landed on Yunyao, carefully observing her. When he saw Yunyao's face clearly, his expression instantly changed, and a gloomy cold light flashed in his eyes. "It's actually you." The left protector and the third elder were stunned. They turned to look at him in confusion. Wuxia, do you know her? Ji Wuxia sneered and said in a low voice, "Of course I know her. This woman in white was Ji Tianqing's companion. When senior brother Murong and I joined hands to kill Ji Tianqing, this woman was traveling with Ji Tianqing and even blocked my sword for him." The left protector and the third elder were enlightened when they heard this. The cold light in their eyes became even sharper. He. So it's Ji Tianqing's woman. That's good. It's really a case of searching high and low only to find it by chance. We were just about to go to Zhongzhou to settle the score with Ji Tianqing, but we didn't expect to meet his companions here. The heavens are really helping us. As he spoke, the left protector and the third elder drew their swords. Their bodies were filled with powerful auras as they gradually approached the Black Dragon. Black Dragon realized that something was wrong. His gaze turned cold as he growled in an icy tone, "What do you want?" The left protector grinned and a playful sneer appeared on her rosy and fair face. "What are you doing? Don't you know what we are doing?" The third elder also sneered and shouted in an icy tone, "You evil dragon, how dare you trespass into our sex-forbidden area? How should you be punished?" The Black Dragon was puzzled and asked subconsciously, "Your sex-forbidden area? Which sect are you from?" "Humph. You don't have the right to know our sect's name." The third elder shouted arrogantly. "You only need to know that the 500,000-mile radius around our sect is our sect's territory. This sun-moon furnace is our sect's forbidden area. You trespassed into our forbidden area and should be punished with death." The Black Dragon immediately understood that the other party was making up a lie to find an excuse. Yun Yao, who was on the Black Dragon's back, looked gloomy as she drew her cold moon sword silently. Although the conversation between Ji Wuxia, the left protector and the third elder wasn't loud, she had heard it clearly. She held her sword and emitted a chilling aura. She stared coldly at Ji Wuxia and sized him up carefully. She didn't understand why the black-robed assassin had turned into a sloppy old man when he was clearly a middle-aged man. However, she used a secret technique to sense the aura of Ji Wuxia's soul and confirmed that they were the same person. "This world is really small. I can't believe that I met you here, you bastard. Back then, you conspired with Murong Zheng to kill us. Now, you've brought your helpers and chased us here. You're really despicable." Ji Wuxia saw that she had recognized his identity and didn't try to hide it anymore. He sneered proudly. He. You're a smart girl, and your innate talent is also top-notch. No wonder you can become Ji Tianqing's wife. Since you already know my identity, then obediently throw down your sword and surrender. You and this Black Dragon are no match for us. You'll only die if you try to resist." The left protector and the third elder also shed all pretense of cordiality. They no longer pretended to be experts. Both of them looked murderous as they stared at the Black Dragon and Yun Yao. "This little girl is Ji Tianqing's wife. Since that's the case, she and this Black Dragon have to stay here. We can't let any of them go. This little girl is really good. Not only is she beautiful, but she's also very talented. She's much better than the geniuses in our sect. Ji Wuxia, I'll make the decision for you. After we catch this little girl, we'll bring her back to our sect to be your wife." Hearing the left protector's words, Ji Wuxia was overjoyed. His eyes shone with excitement. Originally, he thought that the left protector would take Yun Yao as his wife when he saw the left protector's gleaming eyes. However, he didn't expect that the left protector would bestow Yun Yao to him. This was a huge surprise for him. He was afraid that the left protector would go back on her words, so he quickly bowed and thanked her. "Thank you for your kindness, left protector. As long as this matter is completed, I'll serve you for the rest of my life." The third elder also had an envious expression. He looked at Yun Yao with a complicated expression and exclaimed, "Ji Wuxia, you're really lucky. You have to treat the left protector well in the future. This little girl is as beautiful as a fairy and has great talent. Even though I've lived for hundreds of years, I've never seen such a beautiful girl. The left protector stroked his beard in satisfaction and laughed. Then it's decided. That little girl belongs to Wuxia and this black dragon belongs to me. Hearing this, the third elder and Wuxia were both stunned. The two of them finally understood that the left protector's ambition was even bigger. She wanted to take the black dragon for herself. This way, even though she said that she wanted to take the black dragon for the Du Tian sect, it was actually for the left protector herself. However, the third elder and Wuxia didn't dare to go against her and didn't show any signs of dissatisfaction. The three of them didn't waste any time. They immediately exploded with powerful spiritual energy and surrounded the black dragon and Yunyao. The left protector and the third elder waved their swords and slashed out a few giant blades towards the black dragon. Chapter 1273. Above the sun-moon furnace, a great battle was about to break out. Both sides had only exchanged a single blow before the black dragon was sent flying by the combined attacks of the left protector and the third elder. It had separated from Yunyao. Both of them were enduring the destructive attacks as they continuously retreated into the distance. Although the black dragon had awakened its divine beast bloodline and inherited Long Yuan's magic power and battle skills, it was very powerful and was comparable to a cultivator in the third or fourth level of the soul refinement realm. However, the third elder was in the fifth level of the soul refinement realm and the left protector was in the seventh level of the soul refinement realm. No matter how powerful the black dragon was, it was definitely not a match for the two of them. After exchanging 3 blows with the two of them, its body was slashed by a few sword lights. A few large blood grooves appeared on its back and dragon blood gushed out crazily. It knew that it was not a match for the two of them, so it turned around and fled without hesitation. Of course, it did this to avoid the attacks and also to draw the left protector and the third elder away to reduce the pressure on Yunyao. The left protector saw it turn around and laughed proudly. Ha ha ha. You evil dragon still want to escape. Wishful thinking. As he spoke, he unleashed all his power and used a secret technique to teleport. His figure flashed and he was 10 miles away as he chased after the black dragon. 10 Ultimate Dragon Slaying Sword. The left protector roared and used all his strength to swing his sword. He slashed out 9 giant white swords that contained the power of the divine soul. The black dragon sensed danger and sped up desperately to escape. Despite that, it barely dodged the 5 sword lights, but it was still struck by the other 4 sword lights. With a series of peng 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 sounds, 4 large wounds appeared on its body. Dark golden dragon bones were exposed and black dragon blood gushed out. The powerful impact caused it to tumble and fly out. The intense pain made it open its mouth and let out a shrill and angry dragon roar. Seeing the left protector and the third elder chasing after it, it was forced to use a forbidden secret technique. World-destroying dragon breath. It suddenly opened its huge dragon mouth and spat out endless black flames. It was like a flood that poured towards the third elder and the left protector. That pitch-black and mysterious flame was its black dragon's breath, and also its most powerful trump card. Once it breathed out a large amount of dragon breath, regardless of the result, whether or not it could injure the left protector and the third elder, its vitality would be greatly damaged. It would definitely fall into a weakened state and would need to recuperate for a long time to recover. Fortunately, the left protector and the third elder had been too confident and underestimated the black dragon's battle prowess. The two of them were too close to each other and had no time to dodge. They were drowned by the world annihilation dragon breath. Shwa! Their protective mana was immediately destroyed by the world annihilating dragon breath and exploded into countless pieces. The strength of the third elder was relatively weak. Not only was his magical power shield destroyed by the world annihilation dragon breath, several large parts of his body were also scorched. His entire right arm was charred black. His head and face were covered in ash, and his hair was charred black and curly. He looked extremely miserable. The intense pain caused him to go berserk. He let out a few hysterical curses and charged towards the black dragon without regard for anything else. The left protector was the strongest. Even if the world annihilation dragon breath destroyed his mana shield, it did not hurt his physical body. After all, he still had a high-grade soul artifact to protect himself. When the world annihilation dragon breath dissipated, the black dragon had already used this opportunity to escape hundreds of kilometers away. He had temporarily shaken off the left protector and the third elder. The two of them were furious. They immediately exploded with their fastest speed and chased after the black dragon. Damn you, evil dragon! You actually have such powerful techniques. Since that's the case, I will definitely not let you go. I will definitely capture you and make you my mount. The left protector stared at the black dragon with a dark gaze and murmured in a chilling tone. The two of them chased after the black dragon and flew towards the northwest. In just a short while, they disappeared into the horizon without a trace. Around 80 kilometers away from the sun-moon cauldron, Wuxia was fighting with Yun Yao in the sky. The two of them had already exchanged over a dozen blows. Yun Yao fought as she retreated. She was already 80 kilometers away from the sun-moon cauldron. Even though she was a genius and had fused with the divine power of the Neptunian divine pearl, she possessed extraordinary battle prowess. However, Wuxia was an expert at the 5th level of the soul refinement realm after all. He was much stronger than her. Ever since the two of them started fighting, she had been suppressed by Wuxia. After a dozen blows, she had already suffered 3 sword wounds. Her white dress was stained with blood. Wuxia's attacks became fiercer and fiercer. His figure flickered in the sky as he constantly launched sneak attacks and assassinations from various directions. Yun Yao was unable to fight him head-on. She could only use her astral eyes to protect herself as she constantly retreated into the distance. Whoosh! Suddenly, a dazzling white light appeared out of nowhere in the sky 1,000 meters to her left. The white light was like a long and narrow blade. It instantly tore through the sky and struck Yun Yao. Yun Yao sensed that something was wrong, but she was unable to dodge in time. At this critical moment, she could only hold the frost moon sword to her side. With a clang sound, the white light blade struck the cold moon sword. The extremely powerful impact immediately sent her flying. Her face paled as blood flowed from the corner of her mouth. That white light immediately disappeared into the sky. The surroundings became empty again. Wuxia used a secret technique to hide himself. He hid in the sky near Yun Yao. He even sneered proudly. "Little beauty, stop resisting. You can't beat me. Ji Tianqing, that brat, will definitely die. You are destined to become a little widow. But don't worry, I can't bear to kill you. I will bring you back to the sect to be my wife and love you." Ha 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 ha. Wuxia laughed evilly. His voice was filled with mockery and evil. Yun Yao was instantly disgusted. She was embarrassed and angry. Her entire body emitted a cold killing intent. Wuxia. You short-lived old bastard. How dare you be so despicable? Now that my husband isn't here, a clown like you dares to be so arrogant. If my husband comes out of seclusion, he will definitely kill you with one sword. He will tear you into pieces. Seeing that Yun Yao was unable to restrain her anger and yet helpless despair, Wuxia laughed even more arrogantly. Ha 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 ha. Ji Tianqing will definitely die. In the future, I will be your husband. Don't tell me you still want to kill your husband. Little beauty, don't even think about escaping. I will love you now. Following his words, a white light suddenly lit up in the sky 1,000 meters behind Yun Yao. That white light was 10 meters long. It was like a huge sword. It carried an indestructible sword aura and stabbed towards Yun Yao. Yun Yao was already prepared. She immediately manipulated her star Dharma eye and turned it into a 30 feet wide defensive barrier. She blocked behind her. Bam! Amidst the loud sound, the silver light barrier was blasted away. The huge white light sword also exploded. Yunyao's body shook again. Fresh blood flowed out of her mouth. Her soul was also injured. She felt dizzy. She forcefully endured the worsening of her injuries and unleashed all of her magic power to escape into the distance without a care for anything else. Chapter 1274. Unknowingly, 25 days had passed. It was noon again, the time when the sun-moon cauldron's power erupted. Inside the cauldron, the gold and silver sun-moon divine fire were surging wildly. Endless divine fire surged out and sealed the cauldron's entrance. The temperature inside the cauldron had reached its limit, and the power of the sun-moon divine fire was terrifying. However, Ji Tianqing, who was naked, was quietly floating in the cauldron. His eyes were closed, and he felt no pain at all in the surging sun-moon divine fire. Half a month ago, his skin and flesh had been charred black like charcoal. Now, his body had returned to its original state, and his skin was shining with a faint silver light. The flesh and bones under his skin had been tempered by the sun-moon divine fire, and they had become extremely powerful, shining with a bright golden light. Without a doubt, he had finally mastered the galaxy body tempering art and strengthened his body to the limit of the soul tempering realm. Even a top-grade soul weapon might not be able to hurt his body. Because of this, he could stay in the sun-moon divine fire as easily as taking a bath in a hot spring. At this moment, he had reached the final stage of his cultivation, and he was only one step away from mastering the galaxy body tempering art. He could use the power of the sun-moon divine fire to complete the last step of tempering. As time passed, the power of the sun-moon divine fire continued to increase, and it surged like a flood. He focused on his cultivation, and with the help of the sun-moon divine fire, he tempered and strengthened his body on a deeper level. In the air 1,000 meters away from him, a sword as red as fire was also floating in the divine fire. It was the broken sword, the burial of heaven. After 25 days of tempering and strengthening, all the impurities in the broken sword had been removed, and it had reached a perfect state. Although the sword was still missing the tip, the broken sword was already a half-step divine weapon, and its power and effects were terrifying. Soon, 2 hours passed. The sun-moon divine fire gradually calmed down, and the surging waves of fire gradually dissipated. The temperature in the cauldron also dropped rapidly. Ji Tianqing had finally finished his cultivation, and his body was completely tempered. He abruptly opened his eyes, and 2 terrifying beams of golden light shot out from his eyes. They were like sharp swords that sliced through the divine fire of the sun and moon in front of him, creating 2 giant cracks. Gold and silver flames ignited all over his body, exuding an incomparably violent and domineering aura. At this moment, his aura was so strong that it was comparable to that of a primordial soul stage cultivator. He was like a peerless sovereign looking down on all living beings. He spat out a puff of murky air that turned into a golden flame. It extended like a dragon with terrifying power. After suffering, I endured the burning of the sun and moon divine flames for 25 days. After enduring the extreme pain and torment, I finally reached the large success stage and reached the 5th level of the soul refining realm. Ji Tianqing murmured to himself. His eyes were filled with gratification and anticipation. With my current strength and my many trump cards, even if I encounter an expert at the 8th or 9th level of the soul refining stage, I can still fight. Broken Sword, who was not far away, saw that he had woken up and immediately flew to his side. The voice of the burial of heaven sounded in his mind. It said with gratification, "Tianqing, you did not disappoint me. You managed to cultivate the introductory cultivation method of the galaxy body tempering art with your strength in the soul refining realm. Although you are still a few realms away from the astral divine body, with the strength of your body now, you can be said to be invincible in the soul refining realm. With such a tyrannical body, if you continue to cultivate the sword soul Tao, you will be invincible and crush the prodigies and transcendence of the current era. At most, in half a year, I'm afraid that only primordial soul stage cultivators will be able to fight you. Ji Tianqing nodded and said in a low voice, in the past, when I faced the imperial tutor, it was like looking up at a tall mountain. The pressure was immense and unapproachable. But now, if I were to fight the imperial tutor, even if I can't defeat him, I can at least last 100 moves. After a pause, he looked up at the sun-moon cauldron and said in a low voice, we have been in seclusion in the cauldron for 25 days. Yao Yao and the little black dragon must be waiting anxiously. Let's go, we should go out to prevent them from worrying. With that, he held the fiery red broken sword and flew toward the entrance of the vortex. Whoosh! With a flash of golden light, Ji Tianqing left the sun-moon cauldron with the crimson broken sword and rushed out of the giant vortex. No matter how strong the vortex's devouring power was, it could no longer stop him. After 2 breaths, he flew to the top of the vortex and stopped at a height of 10,000 feet to look around. He looked around and found that it was empty. He immediately frowned in confusion. Where did Yao Yao and the little black dragon go? The burial of heaven was also looking around. Seeing that there was no one in a radius of 200 miles, he subconsciously said, we have wasted too much time. Maybe they couldn't wait and left first. Impossible. Ji Tianqing shook his head and said in a certain tone, if I didn't appear, Yao Yao wouldn't have left so easily. Could it be, that they have encountered some trouble? The burial of heaven said in a low voice, that's very likely. After all, this is the Eastern Sea's returning ruins, the most dangerous forbidden area on the continent. Anything can happen here. Ji Tianqing's brows furrowed tightly. His expression turned gloomy and his eyes flashed with a cold light. Without hesitation, he took out a jade slip and sent a message to Yun Yao. Whoosh! The communication jade turned into a stream of light and quickly disappeared into the sky. While waiting for Yun Yao's reply, Ji Tianqing roamed around the sun-moon cauldron and released his divine soul power to search for the aura of the little black dragon and Yun Yao. After about 100 breaths, a stream of light came from the northern sky and fell into his palm. He opened his palm and saw that it was Yun Yao's reply. He inserted his divine soul power and read the message in the jade slip. There was only one sentence from Yun Yao in the jade slip. Her tone was angry and anxious, and her voice was a little weak. Tianqing, I'm being chased by Ji Wuxia of the Heaven sect. I'm escaping to the north and haven't been able to shake him off. The little black dragon is also being chased by 2 powerful cultivators. I haven't heard from him yet. Suddenly seeing this message, Ji Tianqing's expression changed. His eyes flashed with killing intent and his body surged with killing intent. Heaven sect. Ji Wuxia. Isn't that bastard the black-clothed assassin who helped Morongzheng assassinate me? Didn't I destroy his physical body? How did he find this place? He even brought 2 powerful cultivators with him to kill us. Extreme anger and killing intent caused Ji Tianqing's body to emit a cold aura. A blood-red flame of killing intent even condensed above his head. Ji Wuxia, you're dead meat. If I catch you, I'll burn you to ashes. And the Heaven sect, I'll pay you back 10 times over. Ji Tianqing shouted angrily. He quickly put away the jade slip and the broken sword. He summoned his divine soul power sword and flew to the north. Whoosh! Chapter 1275. Whoosh! Ji Tianqing, who was standing on his white sword, shot across the sky like a shooting star as he sped towards the north. His speed was extremely fast and he could travel 10 miles in a single breath. Even a 9th-level spirit refinement realm cultivator would be unable to catch up with such an exaggerated speed. He only used a short day to travel 600,000 miles and arrived at a sea filled with ice mountains. It had already been 5 days since Yun Yao was being chased by Ji Wuxia. Ji Tianqing estimated that even if the two of them tried their best to escape and chase, they would only be able to travel 600,000 miles at most. Therefore, he firmly believed that as long as Yun Yao and Ji Wuxia weren't dead, they would definitely be in this sea of ice. He used a day to travel what others would take 5 or 6 days to travel. Of course, he used up a lot of his magic power and was mentally and physically exhausted. However, he forced his weary body to fly in the glacial sea area, searching for traces of Yun Yao. He had the rhino bracelet on him. If he was close to Yun Yao, they would be able to sense each other within 10,000 miles. With this, he firmly believed that he would be able to find Yun Yao very quickly. The evening sky was a bit dark and gray clouds and fog filled the sky. Even the biting cold sea breeze couldn't blow them away. Huge icebergs floated on the dark blue surface of the sea, moving slowly and silently. Some of the ice mountains were squarish and very wide. Some of the ice mountains were sharp and protruding like icicles and swords. The howling northern wind blew, bringing with it a bone-piercing chill as it headed south. Ji Tianqing flew above the sea with a gloomy expression. He released his divine sense to search the surroundings and constantly paid attention to the changes in the rhino bracelet. In such a harsh environment, Yun Yao was being chased by Ji Wuxia and seemed to be heavily injured. She was in a very dangerous situation. Ji Tianqing's heart was filled with worry and anxiety. He didn't know how long Yun Yao could last and where she was hiding right now. If Yun Yao was really killed by Ji Wuxia, it would be too late for regrets. Even if he killed Ji Wuxia for revenge, killing everyone in Heaven Evasion sect would be useless. At that moment, he hated the fact that he did not have the strength of an Essence Soul Realm cultivator. He could use his Essence Soul avatar to kill his enemies from 50,000 kilometers away. Time passed bit by bit, and the sky grew darker and darker. Night was about to fall. Ji Tianqing searched for 4 hours, but he still couldn't find Yun Yao. Even the Lingxi bracelet didn't sense anything. Looking at the night sky that was getting darker and darker, and the bright moon and stars that appeared one after another in the night sky, he sighed helplessly, filled with grief and anger. Yao Yao, where are you? No matter how difficult it is, you must persevere. I will come to save you soon. At this moment, he suddenly noticed that in the night sky to the northwest, there were specks of light descending like rain. However, he was very far away from the sky and could only see some hazy light. Even so, he could still tell that it was clearly the power of the moon and stars. Seeing this, he was stunned. Immediately, his eyes flickered with light as a sliver of joy appeared in his eyes. The power of the moon and stars. Could it be Yao Yao? She possesses the Neptunian divine orb and possesses mysterious power. Her innate affinity is related to the stars as well. The starlight might be related to her. She's not dead yet, so it's very likely that she's in that region. Thinking up to there, he flew towards the starlight without any hesitation. Although he could see the light of the moon and stars in the night sky, he was actually tens of thousands of kilometers away from that region. After flying for 40,000 kilometers, he arrived in that region of the sea. The hazy starlight in the night sky had already dispersed, and it had returned to silence and darkness. Ji Tianqing flew above the sea as he searched anxiously. A while later, he suddenly saw the Lingxi bracelet light up with a hazy light as it flickered silently. Fantastic! Yao Yao really is in this region of the sea. She's within 10,000 kilometers of here. He immediately invaded it with his spiritual energy and carefully sensed the changes in the Lingxi bracelet as he searched for the location of the other Lingxi bracelet. In just 10 breaths' time, he found the location of the other Lingxi bracelet and quickly flew over on his sword. While tracking the Lingxi bracelet, he found that Yun Yao's location was constantly changing. Clearly, she had been flying all this time. He could only unleash even more magic power and fly towards Yun Yao at an even faster speed. About an hour later, he finally caught up with Yun Yao. Using the Lingxi bracelet's sensing ability, he found that Yun Yao was just a few hundred kilometers away. At the same time, the dark night sky in front of him suddenly lit up with a skyrocketing magic power brilliance. Silver-white moonlight blades cut through the night sky like lightning. There were dozens of blazing white spiritual energy swords as they shuttled and flashed through the sky at an extremely fast speed. Immediately after, the moonlight blades collided with the spiritual energy swords and exploded into a dazzling white brilliance that covered the night sky, illuminating hundreds of kilometers of the night sky. Soon after, a series of muffled bang 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 sounds came from the distant night sky. Ji Tianqing certainly knew that Ji Wuxia must have caught up with Yun Yao and that the two of them were fighting fiercely. His heart immediately tightened as he sped up with all his might. Swoosh! In just a few hundred breaths' time, he had flown more than 800 kilometers away and finally caught up with Yun Yao and Ji Wuxia. He rushed into the battlefield. When he was still 20 kilometers away, he could clearly see that Yun Yao, who was dressed in white, was fighting fiercely with a black-robed old man in the sky. Yun Yao's white dress was stained with blood and most of it had turned dark red. Her hair was disheveled and she looked very miserable. Her movements were a little inconvenient and her sword technique was no longer agile. It was a little stiff and jerky. It was obvious that her injuries were too severe and her magic power was about to be exhausted. The black-robed old man who was fighting with her was still full of magic power. His figure appeared and disappeared in the night sky as he shuttled back and forth like a ghost and attacked continuously. The sword techniques that the two of them used kept colliding with each other. Violent energy waves exploded and formed a terrifying hurricane above the sea. Even the icebergs that were floating nearby were sliced into pieces by the sword chi and turned into countless huge ice blocks that floated on the sea. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing was filled with rage and a strong murderous intent surged from his eyes. Although he did not understand why Ji Wuxia had become a sloppy black-robed old man, he did not care about these details. However, he didn't care about these details at all. With a roar, he rushed into the battlefield. Ji Wuxia! You old man, you shameless bastard, how dare you attack my wife when I am not at home? A filthy old man like you, I will tear you into pieces tonight and use your blood as a sacrifice to my divine sword. The sound waves were like muffled thunder, exploding in the night sky and spreading in all directions. When Yun Yao heard this familiar voice, she immediately revealed a look of pleasant surprise. Her pretty face that was as pale as paper revealed an expression of relief. Ji Wuxia, who was originally full of murderous intent and arrogant, suddenly shook. His expression changed drastically and a strong sense of fear appeared in his eyes. Chapter 1276. Ji Tianqing did not want to waste any time. As he shouted angrily, he charged behind Ji Wuxia like an aurora. Draw your sword. Without any hesitation, he pulled out his black broken sword and slashed at Ji Wuxia who was 1,000 meters away. The moment the half-step god equipment broken sword was drawn, it drew out a white sword light that was 100 feet long. It was like a giant sword that could split the heavens and earth apart. It was also like lightning that descended from the heavens. In just an instant, the sword light was behind Ji Wuxia and drowned his body. The bright sword light clearly illuminated his body and the terrified expression on his aged face. His heart was filled with despair as he cast a secret technique without a care in the world. He condensed a shield of spiritual energy to protect himself. Furthermore, he placed his two dark green curved blades in front of him in an attempt to block Ji Tianqing's sword. Bam! Following a heaven-shaking explosion, the magic power shield collapsed and Ji Wuxia was sent flying with blood spurting out of his mouth. His body was bent at a weird angle as if his waist was bent in half. His spine and waist bones were broken. The two blades in his hands were also sent flying as he fell towards the sea. Back then, Ji Tianqing was only at the 3rd level of the spirit refinement realm and he destroyed his body in 3 moves. Now that Ji Tianqing was at the 5th level of the spirit refinement realm, he was at the same level as him and his battle prowess was more than 5 times stronger than him. Ji Tianqing's sword technique severely injured Ji Wuxia. He was still flying in midair when Ji Tianqing turned into a ray of light and charged over. He waved his sword and stabbed over. Stab sword. With the point of the sword, a dazzling cold light appeared and flashed in the night sky. In the next instant, the extremely condensed light exploded in Ji Wuxia's body and gave off a bright moonlight. Bam! Without a doubt, Ji Wuxia's body exploded into pieces of flesh and blood, creating a rain of dark red blood. Boundless white sword light spread out like a heavenly maiden scattering flowers, enveloping a radius of dozens of kilometers. The night sky was illuminated, and the sea surface and icebergs in this area also reflected a dazzling brilliance, appearing exceptionally gorgeous. The violent hurricane spread out in all directions, engulfing everything within a radius of several hundred miles before gradually dissipating. Ji Wuxia's corporeal body was destroyed and only a ball of blazing white divine soul was left. He was also severely injured and still wanted to escape. He was already scared out of his wits and didn't have the slightest will to fight any longer. He only wanted to leave this place as soon as possible and get away from this devil, Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing immediately chased after him. With a wave of his sword, he was about to slay his divine soul and completely exterminate him. At this moment, Yun Yao, who was not far away, shouted at the top of her lungs, "Stop! Tianqing, don't kill him." Ji Tianqing trusted her without any reservations. Without asking for the reason, he kept his broken sword and struck out a huge golden palm towards Ji Wuxia's soul. Shua! Ji Wuxia couldn't resist at all. He was immediately caught by the golden palm and brought back to Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing grabbed his divine soul tightly. No matter how he struggled, he couldn't break free at all. At this moment, the battle finally ended. Yun Yao had been chased for 6 days and 6 nights. She had been on the brink of death and fainted countless times. She had suffered extremely severe injuries. Now, everything had ended. She was finally free from the torment. She used her last bit of magic power and flew to Ji Tianqing's side. She said in an extremely weak voice, "Tianqing, don't be in a hurry to kill him. He still has use for us. The little black dragon is being chased by the Yuntian sect's protectors and elders. Until now, there has been no news of him. We don't know if he's dead or alive." After saying this, she couldn't hold on any longer. Her eyes slowly closed and she fainted on the spot. Ji Tianqing hurriedly reached out to grab her waist and pulled her into his embrace. Then, he landed on a huge ice mountain and placed Yun Yao flat on the ice. He struck out with his palm and injected a huge amount of magic power into her body. At this moment, he could finally check on Yun Yao's injuries in detail. Yun Yao's white dress was mostly dyed dark red by blood. It was a ghastly sight. There were at least 30 wounds on her body. Half of them hadn't healed yet and were still losing blood. There were also many wounds where the white bones could be seen clearly. It was obvious how deep the wounds were. There were even a few wounds near her heart and neck. They almost destroyed her physical body. Such severe injuries made Ji Tianqing's heart ache. At the same time, he was furious and filled with killing intent. He wanted nothing more than to let Ji Wuxia reform his body and kill him 100 times. In addition, not only was Yun Yao severely injured, but the magic power in her body was also exhausted. Her divine soul was also very weak. Her star Dharma eyes were also damaged and needed a long time to recover. Ji Tianqing suppressed his anger and killing intent. He used the secret technique of the Wooden Emperor umbrella to heal Yun Yao's injuries and injected a huge amount of magic power into her. About 6 hours later, he finally treated Yun Yao's physical injuries. Yun Yao was fine for now. Her physical injuries would be healed by the Greenwood True Qi in 3 to 5 days. However, her magic power and divine soul injuries would take more than half a month to recover. Ji Tianqing sent Yunyao into the sword world and let her heal in the secret chamber in Unta City. Then, he stared at Ji Wuxua's divine soul in his palm and started to deal with this bastard. His entire body was emitting a cold aura that was 10 times colder than the glaciers and icebergs on the sea. He stared at Ji Wuxua's divine soul and said in a cold tone, "Ji Wuxua, last time you and Murongzheng tried to kill me, you severely injured my wife. She needed more than half a month to recover. Now, you chased after her for 6 days and 6 nights and injured her so severely. Tell me, how should I torture you to relieve the hatred in my heart?" As he spoke, Ji Tianqing's divine soul energy surged out of his palm and condensed into dozens of white light spikes. He crazily stabbed Ji Wuxua's soul. The spikes condensed from the white light of the divine soul were a special method to deal with the divine soul of a martial artist. They were as thin as hair but had unparalleled penetrative power. More than 80 divine soul spikes pierced Ji Wuxua more than 1,000 times in just 10 breaths. His divine soul was pierced full of holes. He struggled and rolled around desperately, letting out an incomparably miserable and painful shriek. This kind of pain that pierced the divine soul was 10 times more painful than death by 1,000 cuts. Ji Wuxua was in so much pain that he wanted to die. He couldn't wait to explode on the spot and end this hellish torture. When the divine soul spike stopped, his divine soul rolled around for a long time before it calmed down. Using the divine soul technique, he said to Ji Tianqing, "Ji Tianqing, kill me if you have the guts. However, if you kill me, you will never know the whereabouts of that black dragon. It will definitely be captured by the left guardian and the third elder. It will be reared like an animal and become our sect's guard dog." Chapter 1277. Of course, Ji Wuxua knew that if he fell into Ji Tianqing's hands, he would definitely die. If he begged for mercy and cowardly, not only would he not be able to escape death, he would also lose all his face. If that was the case, he might as well be more stubborn. Perhaps he would still have a chance to live. Ji Tianqing's left hand held his soul tightly as he stared at him coldly. He said in a low voice, "Ji Wuxua, you should know that if you fall into my hands, it will be difficult for you to die even if you want to." His voice was low and cold, causing Ji Wuxua's soul to feel cold. A chill came from the depths of his soul. Ji Wuxua remained silent as he pondered how to escape. Ji Tianqing asked expressionlessly, the left protector and third elder were chasing after the little black dragon. "Where did they go? Where is the Heaven Evasion sect? If you know what's good for you, tell me the truth. Otherwise, I will make you wish you were dead." Ji Wuxua knew that it would be difficult for him to escape. His only hope of escaping was the left protector and the Heaven Evasion sect. Ji Tianqing taking the initiative to ask was exactly what he wanted. He hurriedly replied, "At the time, they flew towards the northwest. As for the location of our sect, so what if I tell you? Do you dare to attack the Heaven Evasion sect in order to save that black dragon? Ha ha ha, let me tell you the truth. There is no need for our sect master or grand elder to act. The left and right protectors can easily crush you. You talk too much." Ji Tianqing's tone was cold as he shouted. A few divine soul spikes condensed in his palm as he ruthlessly stabbed towards Ji Wuxua. Ah! Several holes appeared in Ji Wuxua's soul. He immediately howled in pain and fainted. Ji Tianqing grabbed his soul and flew across the night sky at lightning speed, heading back to the Sun and Moon Great Furnace. 14 hours later, he returned to the Sun and Moon Furnace and chased towards the northwest. He flew through the sky like a streak of light, searching for traces of the little black dragon along the way. He searched for traces of the divine dragon in the sky. However, after searching for half a day, he did not find any clues. As he searched, he silently calculated, it's already been 7 days since the incident. The little black dragon is most likely dead. If it still hadn't been caught, it would definitely still be on the run, already a million li away. If it's already been captured, then it's most likely been brought back to Heaven Evasion Sect. Thinking of this, he shouted at Ji Wuxia, what is the cultivation level of the left protector and third elder? Ji Wuxia's divine soul was riddled with scars. He was already on the verge of death from the torture. He wanted to play dead and not answer, but Ji Tianqing cut him a few more times with the sharp blade of his divine soul, and the pain made him want to kill himself. After struggling and twitching for a while, he became much more obedient. His voice was weak as he said intermittently, "You want to take the black dragon back from the left protector?" That was simply wishful thinking. The left protector is the third strongest person in the sect. His strength has reached the 7th level of the soul refinement realm. Even the third elder was at the 5th level of the soul refinement stage. Our Heaven Evasion Sect strength is not something you can imagine. I advise you to let me go, otherwise your fate will be. Before he finished speaking, Ji Tianqing's hand viciously squeezed, causing his divine soul to creak. Ji Wuxia let out a miserable cry of pain. After a few howls, he fell into a muddled state. Ji Tianqing's face was gloomy as he flew. He continued to calculate, one at the 7th level of the soul refinement realm and the other at the 5th level of the soul refinement realm. Even if the little black dragon didn't hesitate to use its life, it wouldn't be able to escape from those two. There definitely wouldn't be a miracle. The little black dragon must have been captured by those two and brought back to Heaven Evasion Sect. Thinking of this, he turned around and flew towards Heaven Evasion Sect. He had already interrogated Ji Wuxia before and found out the approximate location of Heaven Evasion Sect. Ji Wuxia wanted him to go to Heaven Evasion Sect to seek revenge. Ji Tianqing was very clear that Heaven Evasion Sect was a hidden sect that had been passed down for thousands of years. Their strength was terrifying. Even the 3 ancient families of the Middle Continent couldn't compare to the Sky Evasion Sect. Perhaps only the imperial courts of the various clans could make Heaven Evasion Sect feel fear. Heaven Evasion Sect was a tiger's den. If he entered, he would most likely die. Even so, he did not hesitate to rush over. He had to save the little black dragon. Heaven Evasion Sect was about 300,000 miles south of the Sun-Moon Great Furnace. The sky over the sea was covered by endless white clouds. There were many scattered towering mountain ranges sitting in the vast sea of clouds. The entrance to Heaven Evasion Sect was in one of the mountain ranges in the sea of clouds. Ji Tianqing only used 8 hours to fly to that sea. He flew high into the sky and passed through the sea of clouds. His sharp eyes looked around. 100 miles ahead, there was a 10,000-foot tall mountain in the sea of clouds. It was completely black and there was a lush forest at the top of the mountain. That mountain was very steep and there were strange rocks on the mountain. It looked very ancient and gave off a mysterious aura. There were a few mountains scattered in the sea of clouds, but they were all very ordinary. They were not as majestic as that mountain. Ji Tianqing flew towards that mountain and asked Ji Wuxia, is the entrance to Heaven Evasion Sect on that mountain? Ji Wuxia was probably tortured to the point of collapse or scared out of his wits. He did not dare to lie or hide anything. He weakly replied, yes, that is the Heaven Evasion Sect. There is a Big Dipper star formation on the mountain peak. It is the entrance to our sect. Ji Tianqing nodded expressionlessly and continued to ask, what is the situation of the guards on the mountain peak? How do you open the Big Dipper star formation? Ji Wuxia was silent for a while. He seemed to be hesitating and struggling. Ji Tianqing was about to form a soul blade to torture him when he was terrified. He quickly begged, Ji Tianqing, stop. I will tell you. I will tell you everything. There are 9 guards on the mountain peak. They are all elite disciples of the Sky Origin stage. The leader of the guards is half a step away from the soul refining stage. As for the Big Dipper star formation, only the leader of the guards can open it. Before Ji Wuxia could finish, Ji Tianqing interrupted him and sneered, Ji Wuxia, don't try to fool me with this nonsense. It's useless. You have no value to live anymore. You can die in peace. Ji Wuxia was shocked. He shouted in fear, no. Ji Tianqing, you cannot kill me. If I die, you will never be able to enter our sect. You will never be able to save the Black Dragon. We can make a deal. I will tell you how to open the formation and how to find the left guardian without alerting anyone. I am the 6th elder of Heaven Evasion Sect. I know all the secrets of our sect. If you let me go, I will tell you everything. Let you go. Let you go and tell the others. How naive. Ji Tianqing curled his lips in disdain. Chapter 1278. Ji Wuxia had seen Ji Tianqing's terrifying capabilities and ruthless methods. In order to survive, he had no choice but to compromise. Even if he had to sell out the sect's secrets, he wouldn't hesitate. Of course, he was praying that Ji Tianqing would let him go so he could enter the Du Tian sect. The Du Tian sect was filled with powerful arrays that could make Ji Tianqing unable to hide. The experts in the sect would soon discover Ji Tianqing's tracks, and then blast him to smithereens. However, Ji Wuxia didn't think that Ji Tianqing was not only cruel, but also extremely confident. No need. I don't need your information. I can still kill my way into the Du Tian sect. As soon as he finished speaking, Ji Tianqing grabbed Ji Wuxia's soul and squeezed it. Boom! A muffled sound rang out. Ji Wuxia's soul shattered on the spot, turning into a few pieces. Until he died, he still didn't understand why Ji Tianqing dared to kill him when he didn't even know how to activate the Big Dipper star array. Could it be that Ji Tianqing was so arrogant that he thought he could break the array and kill his way into the Du Tian sect? That was the Big Dipper star array, an array set up by the Du Tian sect's ancestor who was half a step away from the primordial spirit realm. Sadly, Ji Wuxia would never know the answer. With a heart full of resentment and doubt, he disappeared forever. Ji Tianqing placed Ji Wuxia's soul into the broken sword and gave it to the Burial of Heaven to consume. The Burial of Heaven was now a half-step divine weapon. Not only could it consume the soul crystals of beasts, it could also consume the souls of powerhouses. Though using these soul fragments to recover the energy of the Burial of Heaven was like throwing a cup of water on a burning cart of firewood. But many a little makes a mickle, and it was better than nothing. The more soul fragments he devoured, the more benefits he would gain. After dealing with Ji Wuxia, Ji Tianqing held onto the broken sword with his left hand and took out an interspatial ring with his right hand. This storage ring belonged to Ji Wuxia. Previously, when he killed Ji Wuxia's fleshly body, he took this storage ring. After Ji Wuxia died, the soul imprint on the ring collapsed and it became an ownerless item. Ji Tianqing opened the spatial ring and saw that it was filled with mountains of spirit stones, pills, and materials. There were also many rare treasures. However, he wasn't interested in these treasures. After rummaging through his interspatial ring, he found a dark gold medallion. The token was simple and dignified, and there were golden dragons and cloud patterns carved all around it. On the front, there was the word Ji, and on the back, there were the words Heaven Evasion Sect. Without a doubt, this was Ji Wuxia's identity token. He held the token in his hand and stared coldly at Sky Mountain nearby. His lips curled into a cold smile. A moment later, he flew toward Mount Tian Shan with the token in his hand. He moved as fast as lightning, not hiding his tracks and aura at all. Shwa! In the blink of an eye, he was above Sky Mountain. Looking down on Sky Mountain, he saw the situation on the mountain. It was just as Ji Wuxia had said. The peak of the mountain was a flat land with a radius of 10 miles. There was an ancient mountain gate that was hundreds of meters tall. The pillars of the gate were carved with dragons and phoenixes. On the lintel of the gate were the words, Heaven Evasion Sect. It was majestic. On the empty ground inside the gate, there was a platform that was thousands of meters wide. It looked like an altar. This was the Big Dipper star array. It was made with 108,000 precious gems. It shone like the stars in the sky and emitted a powerful and mysterious aura. There was nothing inside the array. It was obvious that it hadn't been activated yet. 9 powerhouses in white robes were guarding around the array. They looked emotionless and didn't speak a word. Ji Tianqing looked over and saw that most of the 9 powerhouses were humans. There was even one of them from the Yao clan and 2 from the Aqua clan. Most of them were at the 5th level of the Sky Origin stage. The leader was at the half-step of the Soul Tempering stage. Shua! Ji Tianqing's body flashed and he descended from the sky. He landed in front of the gate. His face was filled with anxiety. His eyes were filled with worry as he ran towards the array. He looked like he was in a hurry. The white-robed powerhouses guarding the array immediately noticed him. Everyone was immediately alerted. Their eyes flashed as they looked at him. Clang! They pulled out their swords and sabers. Shwa shwa shwa! Everyone rushed over in a flash and surrounded him, blocking his way. Who is there? How dare you trespass on our Heaven Evasion Sect's mountain gate? How dare you? Stop right there. Otherwise, my sword will show no mercy. Many of the guards shouted coldly as they pointed their swords at Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing showed no signs of fear. He took out the dark golden token and held it in his hand. With an anxious face, he shouted, "I'm Brother Ji's friend. I've been entrusted by him to deliver a message to your sect. Everyone, this matter concerns Brother Ji's life. It is extremely urgent. Please make an exception and let me pass." The white-robed guards heard his words and saw the dark gold token in his hand. They immediately let down their guard. Everyone looked at each other and put away their swords. The leader of the guards walked out from the crowd and stood in front of Ji Tianqing. He frowned and asked, "Who are you? Who is this Brother Ji you speak of?" Ji Tianqing pretended to be out of breath, looking tired and anxious as he said intermittently, "I'm a cultivator living in seclusion on Dark Star Island, and I'm a good friend of your honorable sect's 6th elder, Ji Wuxia. A few days ago, Brother Ji was chasing a woman in the ruins of End. However, he met with an accident and was heavily injured. He was in danger, so he gave me the token and asked me to come to your sect to ask for help." Hearing him say this, the guards came to a sudden realization, and the vigilance in their hearts disappeared. However, the leader of the guards was very cautious. He continued to ask, "Why didn't Elder Ji send a message? Why did he ask you to come and ask for help? Also, who is he asking for help from? Our sect has strict rules and outsiders are not allowed to enter easily. Who are you looking for?" Ji Tianqing had already thought of an excuse and answered without hesitation, "Brother Ji met with an accident and his physical body was destroyed." Where did he get the communication jade token from? Previously, when Brother Ji left the sect, he went with the left protector and 3rd elder. However, they separated and something happened. Brother Ji asked me to come to your sect to ask for help from the left protector. Please make an exception. When the leader of the guard saw that he could mention the left protector and 3rd elder, the guard in his heart was completely removed. After all, he saw with his own eyes that the left protector, 3rd elder and Ji Wuxia left together. A few days ago, the left protector and 3rd elder caught a flood dragon. However, Ji Wuxia was nowhere to be seen. Now that he heard him say this, the leader of the guards understood the situation and hurriedly nodded. "Sir, I am impressed by your help. I will get the guards to activate the array now. Please wait for a moment." With that, the leader of the guards gave an order to the guards. A few white-robed guards immediately joined forces to cast a spell and activated the array with a special method. Chapter 1279. After about 100 breaths of time, the 9 white-robed guards opened the Big Dipper star array. The 10-meter-tall altar lit up with a dazzling silver light, condensing into an oval-shaped door of light. This door of light was the portal that connected the Du Tian sect to the outside world. The Du Tian sect was located in an alternate dimension, or rather, a barrier. It was very hidden and safe. In the past 2,000 to 3,000 years, no matter if it was the demons or beasts of the returning ruins or the experts of other races, none of them had been able to invade the Du Tian sect. The captain of the guards bowed at Ji Tianqing and made a "please" gesture when he saw the teleportation portal was opened. "Sir, please enter." "Many thanks." Ji Tianqing nodded and immediately flew into the portal of light. Whoosh! With a flash of light, his body was swallowed by the white light and the portal quickly disappeared. In the next moment, Ji Tianqing entered a barrier, and his feet landed on a soft grassland. He stood on the grass and looked around expressionlessly, observing the situation. He saw that he was surrounded by grass with a radius of 10 miles. Behind him was a circular array made of jade. There were 9 stone pillars in the array. 10 miles in front of him was a lush forest. After a few dozen miles of forest, there was a clear lake nestled at the foot of a majestic mountain range. This was a majestic mountain range that was 1,000 miles long and stretched from north to south. It was like a dragon lying on the ground. The mountain range was filled with dense forest and dense spirit chi. There were several peaks that were thousands of feet tall. On those peaks, one could faintly see some houses and palaces made of gold and red bricks. They shined brightly under the sunlight. It was clear that the Du Tian sect's barrier was very similar to the Shao clan's barrier. They were both small worlds with a radius of a few thousand miles. Not only was this place isolated from the outside world, but the spirit chi here was also very dense. It was very suitable for cultivation. The mountain range in front of him was where the sect was located. On the highest peak, there was a dazzling palace. It should be the Du Tian sect's main palace. Ji Tianqing had learned about the Du Tian sect before and knew that it was a hidden sect that had existed for more than 2,000 years. However, this sect had always been mysterious and low-key. No one knew about it. Ji Tianqing flew into the sky, crossed the grassland, and flew towards the mountain range in front of him. At this moment, Burial of Heaven's voice sounded in his mind, "Tianqing, you don't know much about the Heaven sect. Do you still plan on barging in?" Ji Tianqing said through his soul, "Although the Heaven Vanishing sect is mysterious, I've asked around before and managed to get some information out of Ji Wuxia. There weren't many disciples in the sect, only 200 or 300 of them. However, they were all talented geniuses. Most of them were at the sky origin stage. As for soul refinement realm cultivators, it was said that there were more than a dozen of them. They were either chief disciples, deacons, or elders with real authority. The strongest people in the sect should be the left and right protectors, the sect leader, and the grand supreme elder with the highest status. However, there is one thing that I can be sure of. There is no primordial soul realm expert in the Heaven Ascension sect." Burial of Heaven pondered for a moment before saying in a serious tone, "With your current strength and methods, as long as you don't meet a primordial soul realm expert, your life won't be in danger. However, there are many experts in the Heaven Vanishing sect. It will still be very dangerous for you to barge in. Moreover, you didn't come here to destroy the Heaven Vanishing sect, but to save the little black dragon." Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and said in a deep voice, "I know all this." Burial of Heaven, do you have any good suggestions? Burial of Heaven said calmly, "You have 2 choices. You can charge in and start a massacre in the Heaven Vanishing sect to force them to hand over the little black dragon. Alternatively, you can hide and investigate the little black dragon first before acting according to the circumstances." Ji Tianqing said without hesitation, "The people of the Heaven Vanishing sect aren't stupid. They must have seen that the little black dragon is a divine beast black dragon. That's why they tried so hard to steal it. There hasn't been a divine dragon in the past 10,000 years on the continent. Since they got it, how could they hand it over? For the sake of the little black dragon's safety, I have to sneak in and find it first. However, before he could finish speaking, a cold yell rang out from the sky behind him. Stop! Ji Tianqing's body trembled. He hurriedly stopped and looked behind him. In the sky 10 miles away, there was a thin young man in a white robe flying over at lightning speed. He was around 30 years old. He had a dignified appearance and was quite powerful. He held a treasured sword and gave off a cold aura. His eyes contained a sliver of malice. Clearly, he was not a kind person. Ji Tianqing studied him a few times. His expression did not change, but he guessed at this person's identity. He should be an elite disciple of the Heaven Vanishing sect. After all, this person was at the 6th layer of the Heaven's origin stage. The white-robed young man arrived before him. He placed his hand on the hilt of his sword and stared coldly at Ji Tianqing. He barked, "Who are you? Why have you barged into our sect? What are you trying to do?" Ji Tianqing was not angered. He said expressionlessly, "I am a cultivator from Dark Star Island. I am a friend of your sect's elder, Ji Wuxia. I have come to deliver a message." "A cultivator from Dark Star Island? You're a friend of my master." The white-robed young man immediately frowned. He said warily, "Why haven't I heard of Dark Star Island? What's your name? Since when did my master have a friend like you?" As he spoke, the white-robed young man drew his treasured sword and pointed it at Ji Tianqing's throat. He barked, "Speak. Who are you?" Seeing this, Ji Tianqing cursed inwardly, "This is bad. My luck is too bad. I've actually met Ji Wuxia's disciple." Seeing that he was about to be exposed, he hurriedly took out Ji Wuxia's identity medallion and waved it in front of the white-robed young man. "Little brother, it's great that your brother Ji's disciple. Something big has happened to your master and he's on the brink of death. I've been entrusted by him to seek help from your sect." Ji Tianqing pretended to be overjoyed and no one could find fault with it. Indeed, the white-robed young man hesitated. He asked worriedly, "What happened? What's wrong with my master?" Seeing that he had taken the bait, Ji Tianqing revealed a solemn expression and said in a deep voice, "Little brother, this is not the place to talk. Can we talk somewhere else?" As he said that, he wanted to pull the white-robed young man to a secluded corner. However, what he did not expect was that the white-robed young man was filled with wariness. He broke free from Su Zimo's grasp and shouted angrily, "You're just pretending to be mysterious. You must be up to no good. If you're really my master's friend, follow me to the meeting hall now and explain it to the elders." Seeing how cautious the white-robed young man was, Ji Tianqing turned to observe the surroundings. Seeing that there was no one around, he looked coldly at the white-robed young man and smirked. Chapter 1280. What did you say? The white-robed youth clearly didn't react in time and was stunned. At this moment, Ji Tianqing released a formless spiritual shockwave that blasted towards the white-robed youth's head. There was a buzzing sound in the soul. The white-robed youth's soul was immediately knocked out and his eyes closed. He didn't even see Ji Tianqing make a move and didn't even know how he fainted. Swish! The white-robed young man fell straight down, crashing into the grass below from the air. Ji Tianqing was already prepared. He grabbed the youth's collar and dragged him into the grass, disappearing immediately. The grass and the sky were silent as if nothing had happened. A quarter of an hour later, the white-robed young man drilled out of a dense forest. There was no one around and no one noticed his appearance. Furthermore, no one would know that the current him was no longer the same as before. He stood at the edge of the forest and looked at the distant mountains and palaces. His lips curled into a playful smile as he muttered to himself, "This is really a pillow given when I'm sleepy. Things are much easier now." Li Chang, Ji Wuxia's last disciple, 32 years old, 6th level of the Sky Origin stage. This identity should be able to help me find the little black dragon quickly, right? Without a doubt, this white-robed youth's body had already been possessed by Ji Tianqing. He knocked Li Chang unconscious and dragged him underground. After interrogating him for some basic information, he killed Li Chang. Then, he hid his true body in the sword world and his soul entered Li Chang's body, transforming him into Li Chang. Only experts at the 8th or 9th level of the spirit refinement stage could see that there was something wrong with his soul. Apart from that, no one could tell if he was real or fake. Swish! Ji Tianqing flew into the sky with a treasured sword in his hand and flew towards the mountain range in the distance. Although Li Chang was an inner disciple, he was also Ji Wuxua's last disciple and usually lived in the Heaven's Fate courtyard. That was Ji Wuxua's residence. Li Chang lived there because he was doted on by Ji Wuxua and also because it was convenient for him to cultivate and seek guidance. The divination courtyard was located in the southeast, on a mountain peak filled with blue trees. Ji Tianqing was in no hurry to rush to the Heavenly Fate court. He flew above the mountain range and stopped for a moment to observe the situation below. There were a total of 7 mountains in the majestic and verdant mountain range. Every mountain peak was a place where spiritual energy gathered. There were houses and courtyards built on the mountain peaks, as well as magnificent palaces. Of the 7 peaks, the one in the middle was the highest and was the main peak. It was where the Heaven Evasion sect's main palace was located. Behind the mountain range was a vast and boundless forest. The surroundings were enveloped by a soul-grade grand formation, and it was isolated from the outside world. Ji Tianqing could vaguely see that there were huge demonic beasts moving about in the vast forest. It was clear that the forest was where the Heaven Ascension sect raised their demonic beasts. The left protector and third elder captured the little black dragon. Will they imprison it in that forest? Ji Tianqing could not help but have this thought in his mind. However, he silently used his spiritual energy to search for the little black dragon's aura, but he found nothing. I can sense the little black dragon's spiritual energy from 200 li away. It seems that the little black dragon is probably not in this mountain range. Ji Tianqing thought to himself as he turned and flew toward the 6th mountain peak. Whoosh! 15 minutes later, he arrived at the peak filled with blue trees and landed in the plaza at the peak. There were several azure-robed disciples practicing their swordsmanship on the plaza. When they saw him arrive, they hurriedly stopped their practice and respectfully bowed. Greetings, Senior Brother Li. Ji Tianqing didn't pay any attention to them. He looked straight ahead and walked through the square, heading towards the majestic Heaven's secret courtyard. The divination courtyard was very large. There were 3 palaces, 6 halls, and 4 side courtyards. Those who were not familiar with the terrain would be confused and lose their sense of direction. Ji Tianqing expressionlessly passed through the courtyards, halls, and corridors toward Li Chang's residence. Along the way, many young disciples, servants, and maids respectfully bowed to him. However, he did not respond, nor did he speak. Fortunately, Li Chang was usually more indifferent, and his temperament was ruthless and cold. Those disciples and maids all feared him and wanted to avoid him. Naturally, no one noticed his abnormality. After Ji Tianqing returned to Li Chang's residence, he locked himself in his study and quickly flipped through the books. If he wanted to quickly understand the Heaven Evasion sect, reading was the best choice. If he asked others, he would arouse suspicion and risk exposing his identity. Unknowingly, 6 hours had passed. When Ji Tianqing left the study, night had already fallen and the lanterns had been lit. He had read for an entire afternoon and finally understood the information he wanted. He had a clear understanding of the Heaven Evasion sect. While there was no one around, he silently left the divination courtyard and headed toward the main peak of the Heaven Evasion sect. His target was the left protector. The little black dragon was most likely in the hands of the left protector. The left protector's residence was in the left palace of the main peak. 15 minutes later, Ji Tianqing arrived at the main peak and stopped in the night sky. Under the night sky, the dozen or so palaces and residences of the main peak were all brightly lit. There were very few people walking around the various residences and palaces. It was very quiet. However, Ji Tianqing used his soul to investigate and found that there were sentries all around. There were at least several dozen elite guards. He landed in the square in front of the palace and swaggered toward the palace on the left. When he arrived at the entrance of the left palace, he was blocked by 6 guards. Halt! This is the left protector's residence. You are not allowed to trespass. Ji Tianqing said expressionlessly, I am Elder Ji's last disciple, Li Chang. I have come to visit the left protector tonight and ask about my master. Please inform her. The leader of the guards looked at him and said in a deep voice, You brat, you came here yesterday and I told you that the left protector is not in the palace. You still dare to come here? Ji Tianqing frowned slightly and cursed in his heart, Li Chang, you little bastard. You are really ruining my plans. He looked at the guard expressionlessly and said stubbornly, My master and the left protector left the sect together to run some errands. They haven't returned yet. I am worried about my master's safety. So what if I come here every day to ask? Where is the left protector? No matter what, I want to see her tonight. Seeing that his attitude was so firm and even a little tough, the guard was stunned for a moment. He then sneered, You really don't know what's good for you. I'm not afraid to tell you the truth. The left protector is in our sect's forbidden area, the floating mountain. He is discussing important matters with the elders. You don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. If you have the guts, then go to the forbidden area. When the time comes, the guards guarding the forbidden area will definitely cut you into pieces. Ji Tianqing glanced at him coldly. He didn't say anything else and turned to leave. He didn't return to the Tianji court. Instead, he flew into the sky and rushed to the forbidden area, the floating mountain. Chapter 1281. Ji Tianqing ignored the guards and did not waste any time. He flew straight to the floating mountain. He had read the books in the study before and had some understanding of the floating mountain. It was one of the forbidden grounds of the Heaven Evasion sect. It was located 800 li north of the mountain range, deep within the barrier. According to the books, the floating mountain was naturally formed and had a history of several thousand years. Over 2,000 years ago, when the founding ancestor of the Heaven Evasion sect had chosen this location, the floating mountain had already existed. No one knew why the 1,000-meter-tall mountain was floating in the sky, shrouded by white clouds and thick fog. However, the floating mountain contained a mysterious energy that was extremely beneficial to cultivation. It had always been the place where the Heaven Evasion sect master and enforcers cultivated in seclusion. It was said that there were experts overseeing the floating mountain, as well as many elite experts guarding it. There were also ferocious mutated beasts residing there. The ordinary disciples, deacons, and elders of the sect did not dare to approach the floating mountain, or else they would be severely punished. Ji Tianqing had disguised himself as Ji Wuxia's disciple Li Chang, but he did not have the right to set foot on the floating mountain. If he was discovered, he would only be punished. However, he only wanted to save the little black dragon in the shortest amount of time possible. How could he care about anything else? His figure merged into the night and silently tore through the curtain of night, flying as fast as lightning toward the floating mountain. On the way, he passed by a forest several hundred li wide and looked down at the tamed monsters. He silently used a technique to sense the little black dragon's aura, searching for traces of it. Not long after, he crossed the forest and continued to fly toward the floating mountain. What he could be sure of was that the little black dragon was not in that forest. After the left enforcer captured the little black dragon, he has not been in the left palace these past few days and has been hiding in the floating mountain. It seems that the little black dragon is very likely imprisoned in the floating mountain. He silently speculated, the little black dragon definitely won't submit so easily. The Heaven Evasion sect won't be able to tame it that easily. Moreover, it is a divine beast black dragon. The Heaven Evasion sect will definitely not be willing to kill it. He could only be sure that the little black dragon's life was not in danger for now. About a quarter of an hour later, Ji Tianqing flew into the vast mountains. Under the veil of night, numerous mountains that were 3 kilometers tall stood towering in all directions. They were like countless enormous beasts that were waiting to devour a man, and they lay dormant in the darkness. In the center of the dozens of mountain peaks, in the sky, thousands of feet above the ground, floated a 1,000 feet tall mountain. Even though it was a night with a bright moon and few stars, the area around the mountain was covered with white clouds and fog, shrouding half of the mountain. The mountain was steep, and there were cliffs everywhere, dotted with dark green trees. Ji Tianqing raised his head and looked up. He saw that halfway up the mountain, there were dots of lights, and he could vaguely see people walking around. Several ancient palaces had been built on top of the mountain. They were magnificent and had a domineering aura that could suppress the heavens and the earth. However, it was dark inside the palace, with only a few scattered lights shining weakly. Ji Tianqing retracted his aura and quietly approached the floating mountain, constantly observing the surroundings. He was like a ghost, blending into the night. Even if someone flew past him, they might not be able to detect him. 100 breaths of time later, he arrived at the base of the floating mountain, hiding in the white clouds and fog. He used his soul to investigate and found that the entire floating mountain was protected by an invisible formation. Once an external force came into contact with the formation, it would light up, alarming the guards and experts on the mountain. It really is a forbidden ground of the Heaven Evasion sect. The defenses are so tight. The formation protecting the floating mountain is actually a mid-grade soul-level formation. Ji Tianqing observed for a while and couldn't help but frown. To him, breaking through a mid-grade soul-level formation was not difficult. The difficult part was not alarming anyone. He slowly flew around the base of the mountain, carefully observing the situation. An hour later, he flew a circle around the floating mountain, clearly observing the situation on the mountain. From the middle of the mountain to the top, there were over 30 sentry posts. Over 100 Sky Origin stage guards were patrolling in a regular pattern. The palace at the top of the mountain seemed to be silent and no one was moving, but there were fluctuations of soul refinement realm cultivators. Ji Tianqing circled to the back of the floating mountain and hid under a hidden cliff. He secretly released his soul to investigate the method to break the defensive formation. Half an hour later, he had a rough idea of how to break the formation, but he was not in a hurry to act. Half an hour later, a group of armored guards with swords flew past him, unhurriedly flying away. When the group of guards disappeared into the night, he immediately released his soul and began to break the defensive formation. Half an hour later, another group of patrolling guards flew over from afar, about to pass above Ji Tianqing's head. At this time, Ji Tianqing successfully broke the formation, breaking a hole in it, and his figure flashed into it. The next moment, the formation closed by itself, and he was already inside the floating mountain. Throughout the entire process, he did not alarm anyone, including the patrolling guards not far away. By the time the patrolling guards flew past this area, Ji Tianqing had already disappeared into the darkness, silently rushing towards the mountain peak. In a short incense stick's worth of time, he had searched the entire mountain peak. The 5 palaces on the mountain peak had several hundred rooms of various sizes. He had used his soul to investigate them all. The result was indisputable. The little black dragon was not on the mountain peak. He hid in the corner of one of the palaces, frowning as he pondered, I just used a secret technique to investigate. The little black dragon's aura is nearby. But it's not on this mountain peak. Could it be inside the floating mountain? When he thought of this, he was about to use an earth movement technique to drill into the mountain and search carefully. But at this time, something strange happened. Whoosh! A dazzling sword light suddenly shot out from the night sky, stabbing straight at Ji Tianqing's head. The blazing white sword light contained vast soul energy and was extraordinarily powerful. Ji Tianqing did not think too much about it. He subconsciously raised his right hand and slapped out. Bang! With a muffled boom, the 1-foot-long soul sword light was pulverized by his slap. His palm was unscathed, but his body found it difficult to endure the massive impact and was forced back 3 steps. Ji Tianqing grimaced, his eyes flashing with cold light. Oh no, I've been discovered. Only now did he recall that in one of the palaces on the mountain peak, a soul refinement realm expert was hibernating in seclusion. When I was searching for the little black dragon, I must have alarmed that soul refinement realm expert. As this thought flashed through his mind, another white light shot out from the night sky. Whoosh! The white light tore through the night sky and instantly landed on a roof 100 feet in front of him. When the white light scattered, a tall and muscular figure appeared. This was a middle-aged man dressed in purple robes, 2 meters tall, and with a dignified face. This person had an extraordinary bearing, his eyes flashing with an intimidating light, and his body exuded a noble and powerful domineering aura. Chapter 1282. The purple-robed man shouted angrily as he stared at Ji Tianqing. You were able to take one of my attacks. You are definitely not a disciple of the house. As he spoke, he released a formless spiritual energy, which swept towards Ji Tianqing like raging waves. In the blink of an eye, the purple-robed man sensed that Ji Tianqing's spiritual energy was in the 5th level of the spirit realm. The purple-robed man's expression changed and he sneered, "What kind of coward dares to pretend to be a disciple of the house and sneak into our forbidden area?" Ji Tianqing knew that his identity had been exposed and he could no longer pretend. He decided to just stay silent and didn't try to explain himself. He saw this person's face and knew that this person was in the 7th level of the spirit realm. He was certain that this person was the right protector. Without any hesitation, he pulled out his broken sword and attacked the right protector. Whoosh! The moment the broken sword came out, a 20-meter-long ray of white light shot out. It carried with it the power to destroy everything. It pierced through the night sky and arrived before the right protector. The right protector was not prepared for this. Ji Tianqing was so ruthless that he attacked without a word. Plus, this attack was so aggressive, the sword ray was so blinding, and the power was so shocking. His expression changed as he stared angrily. His eyes flashed with shock and surprise. At this critical moment, he had no time to dodge. He could only use his spiritual energy to create a shield to protect himself. Boom! After a muffled explosion, the sword ray broke through the right protector's shield and sent him flying. While he was still in midair, he spat out a mouthful of blood and let out a muffled scream. Boom! The protector of the right crashed into the palace wall 1,000 feet away with a violent force. The thick vermilion palace wall collapsed on the spot, splashing dirt and rocks all over the sky. However, he was a cultivator in the 7th level of the spirit realm after all. In a flash, he charged out from the rubble. Whoosh! In a flash of white light, the right protector flew into the night sky and a dark red sword appeared in his right hand. He looked down at his chest and saw that his purple robe was in tatters. There was a hole in it. Inside the hole, the black soft armor was broken as well, revealing a chopstick-long wound. It was so deep that his bones could be seen. The sword was only 2 inches away from piercing through his heart. The right protector was both shocked and furious. He stared at Ji Tianqing with his eyes wide open and his body was filled with murderous intent. You damned beast! Who are you? How dare you attack my house? Are you tired of living? It was obvious that the sky protector of the Eastern Sea ruins for the past 2,000 years had a deep foundation. The right protector was used to living like a prince. He couldn't imagine that someone would dare to sneak into the Heaven Evasion sect and attack him. Because of his carelessness, he was injured by G22 to attack to kill him. His angry roar exploded in the night sky, like rolling thunder, and immediately spread to the peak of the mountain. The guards who were patrolling nearby were immediately alerted and rushed over with a swish sound. Ji Tianqing knew that his identity had been exposed and that there would be a fierce battle tonight, so he decided to go all out and start a massacre. He stared at the right protector expressionlessly. He waved the broken sword in his right hand again and stabbed forward. Die! As he uttered these cold words, the broken sword pierced out a cold light that was condensed to the extreme, flashing and disappearing in a flash. The right protector was on high alert as if he was facing a great enemy. However, he couldn't understand this sword technique at all. He could only hold the sword in front of his chest and form a shield again. In the next moment, the cold light that had been condensed to its limits suddenly exploded at his waist. Boom! With a muffled sound, the right protector's lower body exploded into pieces of flesh and blood that flew in all directions. He didn't know what happened at all. He had lost his legs and feet and was only left with the upper half of his body. His face was filled with fear and shock as he fled into the distance in a panic. A dignified expert at the 7th level of the soul refining realm couldn't even block one of Ji Tianqing's moves. Ji Tianqing had only used 2 swords to severely injure the right protector, leaving him with only half his body. What kind of terrifying strength was this? The right protector had never met such a terrifying expert before. Of course he was shocked and angry, overwhelmed with shock. Ji Tianqing subconsciously flew into the night sky and chased after him with the broken sword. But at this moment, a mournful howl could be heard from the hanging mountain beneath his feet. Roar! Ji Tianqing immediately heard it clearly. It was the cry of a dragon. He was not unfamiliar with this sound. He immediately recognized that it was the little black dragon's voice. The little black dragon is really inside the mountain. This thought flashed through his mind. He immediately gave up on chasing the right protector and turned into a golden light, burrowing into the ground and flying into the mountain. After 2 breaths, more than 10 elite guards rushed to the scene in a hurry. They were filled with anxiety as they searched the surroundings. However, Ji Tianqing and the right protector had already left. The scene was empty, only a pile of broken walls and rubble remained. The guards didn't know what was going on. They could only send out warning signals that an assassin had invaded. In the floating mountain, there was a massive cave. The cave was 1,000 meters wide and was oval like an egg. There were traces of man-made excavation on the walls and many pearls and gems were embedded in them. There was also a powerful defensive array. The ceiling of the cave was densely packed with gems, shining with multicolored splendor that illuminated the entire cave. In the center of the cave, there was a circular altar that was 10 feet tall. The altar was 1,000 feet wide and was surrounded by 18 black stone pillars, carved with images of ancient beasts and gods. At this moment, 6 experts in purple robes were standing around the altar. They were waving their palms, sending out beams of light as they used all their strength to unleash magic arts. The mysterious array was activated, and a light shield with a radius of 100 zhang lit up, covering the entire altar. The 18 stone pillars in the surroundings all shone with dazzling multicolored light, releasing streams of flames that were as thick as buckets. More than 60 pillars of flame extended to the center of the altar like chains of flame, firmly binding a black serpent dragon. It was the little black dragon. Its 1,000-meter-long body had shrunk to only 100 meters long. It was in a very miserable state. Its body was covered in wounds and holes. One could clearly see its dragon bones, which were still dripping with dark red blood. More than 60 flaming chains bound its body, neck, tail, and claws. It could only lie on the altar, unable to move at all. The 6 powerhouses activated the formation and unleashed an incomparably violent power that ruthlessly suppressed it, violently destroying its body and soul. It was in so much pain that even a scream was an extravagant hope. Of the 6 experts, the leader was the left protector. He had a sinister smile on his face as he coldly stared at the little black dragon. He shouted, "You evil dragon, do you still think you can escape after coming to our sect? Dream on." Chapter 1283. The left protector's face was ferocious and his body was filled with killing intent. After he finished speaking, another white-haired, purple-robed elder continued to persuade the little black dragon. "Black dragon, you are a divine beast. No matter who you cultivate with, it is for the sake of obtaining great strength. That Ji Tianqing offended our Du Tian sect and will definitely die without a complete corpse. Why are you so stubborn? As long as you are willing to submit and obediently stay in our sect as a divine beast, our sect will provide you with enough resources to allow you to cultivate without worries. Our sect is an ancient sect with thousands of years of history. Our strength is second only to the imperial courts. We are definitely your best backer." This purple-robed elder was the Du Tian sect's grand elder. He had already discussed this with the left protector. One would play the good cop and the other would play the bad cop. Only by playing the good cop and the bad cop would the black dragon submit. However, the little black dragon's attitude was still as stubborn and unyielding as before. Just like before, he coldly glanced at everyone and roared, "We dragons are born noble and will only recognize one master in our lives. We will never change masters. You shameless old bastards, don't even think about making me stay in this filthy place. If you have the guts, then kill me." However, old Ji will kill his way to the Du Tian sect sooner or later and kill all of you old bastards to avenge me. The left custodian and the 5 elders were infuriated. Their eyes were filled with murderous intent. The left protector was completely enraged and cursed, "You damned evil dragon, you don't know your place. It's been a whole 5 days, and no matter how much we tried to persuade you, you didn't waver at all. Fine, I want to see just how stubborn you are. Don't you want to die? I'll fulfill your wish right now." As he spoke, there was a flash of light in the left protector's right hand and a dark silver magic sword appeared. He held the magic sword in his hand and poured all of his power into the magic sword, forming a blinding white sword light that was 10 feet long. Then, he held the magic sword with both hands and looked like he was going to slash at the little black dragon's neck. Seeing this scene, the expressions of the other 5 elders changed. They revealed anxious expressions and hurriedly sent voice transmissions to dissuade him. "Left protector, please don't be rash. This is not an ordinary flood dragon, but a legendary divine dragon. Left guardian, the sect leader has given a death order. No matter what, we have to subdue this divine dragon. Please don't be foolish. If we can obtain this dragon, our Heaven Ascension sect will be able to dominate the world in the future and make all the imperial courts bow before us." The left protector was so angry that she lost her mind for a moment. After being persuaded by the elders, he immediately calmed down, and the killing intent in his heart instantly dissipated. But the little black dragon was still glaring at him. The magic sword in his hand froze in midair. He didn't know whether to put it down or take it back. It was rather awkward. The little black dragon's eyes were filled with disdain as it said in a mocking tone, "Left protector, I knew you were a coward. Kill me if you have the guts. Unfortunately, you don't have the guts. You're just an old tortoise, a coward." The left protector flew into a rage. His entire body emitted a murderous aura as he shouted in a muffled voice, You evil creature, I will definitely kill you today." As he spoke, he raised the magic sword in his hand again and viciously slashed at the black dragon's neck. His patience had already been exhausted in the past few days. He had been thoroughly enraged by the little black dragon. Even if the elders tried to dissuade him, it was useless. He only wanted to kill the black dragon with a single slash to vent his anger. The blazing white sword descended from the sky and slashed at the black dragon's neck. It was about to behead it. The 5 elders present were unable to stop it in time. They could only watch as the black dragon's head was separated from its body. At this critical moment, a muffled bang suddenly came from the rock layer at the top of the cave. A scorching white sword light, which was also 10 zhang long, shot out from the rock stratum with the power to destroy the world. It slashed towards the altar like a shooting star. In the next moment, the 2 blazing white swords collided in the air, erupting with a muffled bang. Boom! A deafening explosion violently reverberated through the cave, causing the entire cave to tremble. The violent chi wave, wrapped in the blazing white light fragments, burst out in all directions, immediately causing the few elders to retreat 10 steps back. Having narrowly escaped death, the little black dragon immediately raised its head to look at the ceiling. The left protector and the 5 elders were also alarmed by this sudden turn of events. They glared at the ceiling with furious eyes. A young man in a white robe came out of the rock layer at the top of the cave and flew to the top of the altar with a whoosh. His face was cold as he wielded a broken sword. Without a word, he swung his sword at the stone pillars around the altar, severing the flame chains. When the left protector and the elders clearly saw the white-robed man's appearance, they immediately paled in fright and confusion. "This kid, isn't he Elder Ji's disciple, Li Chang? Li Chang, what are you doing? Have you gone mad? That's not right. Why would Li Chang barge into the Hanging Mountain? How could he have the qualifications and strength? No. This guy is a soul-tempering expert. He's definitely not Li Chang." After a few words of discussion, they immediately realized that something was wrong and immediately came to their senses. "He's not Li Chang, quickly kill him." The left protector was the most furious. After roaring, he swung his sword at Ji Tianqing. The other 5 elders also took out their weapons and slashed out sword and saber lights that blotted out the sky and covered the earth, besieging Ji Tianqing. At this time, Ji Tianqing had already shattered several stone pillars and severed more than 20 flame chains. Seeing that everyone was surrounding him, he hurriedly took out 5 soul magic swords and launched a counterattack. He used the soul-severing sword technique and controlled the 5 soul magic swords to fly around the altar, forming a huge net of white light. The attacks of the left protector and the 5 elders were all blocked by the net of white light, unable to harm him or the little black dragon in the slightest. Boom! 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 A series of muffled explosions reverberated through the cave, causing the entire Hanging Mountain to shake. The berserk energy, mixed with fragments of light of different colors, exploded in all directions, turning the entire cave into a state of chaos. The scene was in complete chaos. The earth-shaking commotion alarmed everyone on the Hanging Mountain. The left protector and the 5 elders angrily and anxiously roared as they attacked Ji Tianqing with all their strength. Ji Tianqing used this opportunity to sever several dozen flame chains and rescue the little black dragon. Although the little black dragon did not recognize his appearance, it could sense the presence of his soul. It immediately asked in pleasant surprise, "Old Ji? Is it you? Did you really come to save me?" Ji Tianqing nodded at it and said in a low voice, "Little black dragon, your injuries are too heavy. Go into the sword world and heal. Leave the rest to me." Chapter 1284. The little black dragon entered the world within the sword with a whoosh and entered peaceful Earth City to heal. Ji Tianqing was left alone in the cave. He stood proudly on the altar, facing the attacks of the left protector and the 5 elders. Without the little black dragon holding him back, he had nothing to fear. He wielded the broken sword, the burial of heaven, and began a massacre. "Draw your sword." He brazenly pulled out the burial of heaven and slashed out a blazing white sword light at an elder on the left. The blazing white sword light shattered the saber light and sword images in the sky before striking that elder and sending him flying. This elder was at the 4th tier of the soul refinement realm, but under Ji Tianqing's sword, he was so weak that he couldn't even take a single blow. His magic power shield was instantly shattered and his abdomen was severed by the sword light. His body was instantly cleaved in two. As he flew back, the two halves of his body wildly vomited blood and he let out a shrill howl. When the other elders saw this scene, they were all dumbfounded, their hearts beating wildly. The left protector was both shocked and furious. He madly roared, "Just who is this bastard? Kill him! Everyone, work together and kill him!" The other four elders didn't dare to hesitate. They hurriedly used all their strength to surround Ji Tianqing, using their trump cards. Multicolored saber light and sword light, dazzling white pillars of spiritual energy, and all sorts of strange secret techniques converged into a flood that drowned out Ji Tianqing's figure. Ji Tianqing was fearless. He controlled the 5 spiritual energy swords to form a sword net that protected his body. No matter how the 4 elders attacked him, their attacks couldn't break through the sword net. They couldn't harm him in the slightest. Now that he was at the 5th tier of the soul refinement realm and had condensed 5 spiritual energy swords, he could use them as a foundation to form a sword array and use all sorts of mysterious killing moves. The 4 elders were weak. Even if they went all out, they couldn't do anything to him. Instead, he took advantage of the 4 elders' fierce attacks to counterattack with the broken sword. Stab! Die! Seizing an opportunity, while the great elder was unprepared, he ruthlessly stabbed out with his sword. A cold light burst out from the blade and disappeared in an instant. The 4 elders didn't notice this, nor did they guard against what kind of sword technique this was. But in the next moment, this extremely condensed cold light pierced through the first elder's chest and exploded inside his body. Boom! With a deafening explosion, the great elder's body exploded on the spot, turning into pieces of flesh and blood that shot out in all directions. The 2 elders who were closest to him were caught off guard and were splashed with blood and flesh. They looked extremely miserable. This sudden scene scared the elders silly. Their faces were full of horror. The fighting spirit in their hearts melted like snow. They hurriedly shouted and retreated, fleeing out of the cave. "This guy is too strong. We're no match for him. There's a strong enemy invading our sect. Quickly, ask the protector of the right and the sect leader to come and help. Everyone, don't attack by force. Lure him out of the forbidden area and then join forces to encircle him." The 3 elders who were not injured fled out of the cave in a panic. Their speed was unbelievably fast. The 2 elders whose bodies were destroyed also desperately fled. Their divine souls turned into a ray of white light and flew out of the cave as fast as lightning. Ji Tianqing certainly would not let them go. His figure flashed and he chased after them. "Bastard, watch out for my sword!" he roared with murderous intent. His left hand formed a spell, controlling 3 divine soul magic swords, and slashed at the 3 elders. He held the broken sword in his right hand and slashed out a ray of sword light with all his strength towards the divine soul of the great elder. With a muffled bang bang bang, the elders were hit one after another. The 3 elders who were in good health were all hit by the divine soul magic swords. They fell to the ground with blood spurting out from their bodies. They rolled and screamed in pain. The ray of sword light from the broken sword hit the great elder's divine soul and cut it into several pieces. Ji Tianqing grabbed the pieces of divine soul with his big hand and gave them to the burial of heaven as trophies. However, just as Ji Tianqing was chasing after the elders, there was a sudden change in the cave. The left guardian did not make a move, nor did he take the opportunity to escape. He was hiding in the dark and took advantage of Ji Tianqing's unpreparedness to launch a sudden attack without warning. "Little bastard, die!" He silently lurked behind Ji Tianqing. When he was about 10 feet away from Ji Tianqing, he attacked like lightning. With a roar, he burst out with 100% of his power and slashed out 9 rays of dazzling white sword light in the shape of a dragon. 9 dragons fighting heaven. The 9 rays of sword light crisscrossed like 9 divine dragons flying back and forth. They exploded with destructive power and fiercely blasted towards Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing was caught off guard and was drowned on the spot. Boom! With a deafening explosion, the dazzling white light burst out and filled the entire cave. The raging shockwave, wrapped in endless light shards and broken stones, burst out in all directions and fiercely bombarded the walls of the cave. Boom! The loud noise did not stop, and the entire floating mountain shook violently. The huge altar in the cave and the surrounding black stone pillars were all blown to pieces and turned into broken stones on the ground. Huge cracks appeared on the walls of the cave as well. Countless huge rocks and mud fell down with a rumbling sound, filling up more than half of the cave. The outside of the floating mountain was cracked and densely packed with cracks. It was disintegrating at a speed visible to the naked eye. Such an earth-shattering commotion stunned everyone. Ji Tianqing's body was after all a Sky Origin stage martial artist's body. How could it withstand such a horrifying attack? When the 9-dragon sky-conquering sword light hit him, his body immediately exploded and turned into dust that filled the sky. However, his spiritual soul was intact. He instantly got into the broken sword and returned to his body. At the same time, the few elders who were running for their lives all stopped and turned around to look at the cave behind them. Even though the cave was in chaos and rocks were flying everywhere, they still clearly saw the scene of the left protector chopping Ji Tianqing into pieces with her sword. The few elders were suddenly spirited. They were relieved and cheered excitedly. Haha, that's great. The left guardian is indeed powerful. He killed that bastard with one slash. At the critical moment, the left guardian's sword art was superb. He killed the enemy with one slash. The elders all flattered the left guardian. The left guardian was also very proud. He smiled proudly. Elders, you are flattering me. That bastard pretended to be a disciple of our sect and launched a surprise attack. That was why he could take advantage of us. Now that I have seen through his scheme, of course I will kill him with lightning speed. As the saying goes, evil cannot prevail over good. How can such a despicable person do anything to our Sky Origin sect? The left guardian acted righteously. The elders all began to praise and flatter him. However, just as everyone was flattering each other, a mocking sneer suddenly sounded in the cave. Chapter 1285. This sudden sneer reverberated in the cave and was particularly ear-piercing. The left custodian and the elders were stunned on the spot. They immediately searched their surroundings in astonishment. The floating mountain was still shaking. The cave was cracked and the ceiling kept collapsing. Boulders and soil kept falling. The entire cave was filled with dust and broken rocks, making it impossible to see what was going on inside. However, a handsome young man in a white robe appeared out of thin air from the rubble in the cave. This man was 8 feet tall. He had sword-like eyebrows and bright eyes. His face was handsome and his eyes were as vast as the stars. He exuded a transcendent aura that looked down on the world. He was powerful, honorable, and mysterious. He stood proudly in the sky above the ruins. His body was wrapped in a layer of faint golden light. He held a pitch-black broken sword in his right hand. Boulders and soil kept falling from the ceiling, but they could not hurt him at all. They automatically bounced off his head. An invisible pressure of the divine soul enveloped the entire cave. There was an extremely sharp sword will in his body. It was as if it wanted to break through the floating mountain and tear the sky apart. The left guardian and several elders stared at him. Their eyes widened in horror. They looked as if they had seen a ghost. Who is this guy? He is not Li Chang. Li Chang's body has been destroyed by the left guardian. I know. He is that thief. He is the one who has taken over Li Chang's body. Could this be his real body? Damn it. How can he be so powerful? After a few words of discussion filled with fear, the crowd immediately guessed the truth. In the next moment, the elders' complexions changed dramatically. They turned around and flew out of the cave in a panic. They fled desperately. Oh no, everyone run. The left guardian is powerful. Let him take care of this place. We are not running away. We are just going to report and find reinforcements. Go and inform the right guardian and the sect leader. This guy is not someone we can deal with. As the elders fled, they didn't forget to shout loudly to cover up their escape. Ji Tianqing ignored the frightened elders and stared at the left protector with lightning-like eyes. The corners of his mouth curled into a sinister sneer. Left protector, your time of death has come. The pain you inflicted on the little black dragon, I will definitely return it double. As his voice fell, he waved the broken sword in his hand and slashed out a blazing white sword light. Draw your sword. It was the same sword technique, and it was the same blazing white sword light that was 30 meters long. However, the difference was that Ji Tianqing's spirit had returned to his main body. Using his main body to execute the ultimate sword technique, his power had increased explosively by nearly 8 times. Shwa! The dazzling sword light instantly cut through a distance of 1,000 feet and arrived in front of the left protector. The left protector's eyes widened. Deep fear and shock appeared in his pupils as he subconsciously dodged. However, boom! With a muffled sound, the left protector was struck by the sword light. Blood spurted out from his body as he was sent flying. He rolled and smashed into the cave wall 100 meters away, causing a few wide cracks to appear on the cave wall. When he landed on the ground, he discovered that his left shoulder had been completely severed. His entire left arm was gone. The extreme pain caused his face to pale and his body to break out in a cold sweat. The pain caused his body to twitch. Damn it! Just who is this brat? How can he have such terrifying strength? The left protector could not believe this. He was a 7th-layer soul refinement expert. How could he not even be able to withstand a single strike from his opponent and have his arm severed? In his shock, he lost all will to fight. Without hesitation, he turned and fled from the cave. Humph, still want to run? In your dreams. Ji Tianqing coldly snorted. He waved the broken sword in his right hand and viciously stabbed out. Whoosh! A cold light illuminated the sky. A sword light condensed to the limit instantly pierced through the turbid air and stabbed into the left protector's back. Then, that cold light blossomed and exploded. Bang! In the earth-shattering explosion, a dazzling white light exploded like a mushroom cloud and filled the entire cave. The destructive power not only blasted the left protector's body into pieces, but it also blasted his soul into pieces, which scattered in all directions. The floating mountain, which was already full of cracks, could no longer withstand such a destructive blow and immediately collapsed. With a series of cracking sounds, the thousands of feet tall floating mountain cracked in all directions and completely shattered into dozens of pieces. Endless amounts of boulders and dirt flew in the night sky and fell to the ground. The power of the mysterious array could no longer support the collapse of the floating mountain. The floating mountain also collapsed. Rumble. After a series of explosions that shook the sky, the floating mountain collapsed into rubble and debris. It crashed into the mountains and piled up into a 1,000-meter-tall mound. The splendid palace on the mountain peak, as well as the many hidden secret passages, caves, and secret vaults in the mountain, were all destroyed. After a full 100 breaths of time, the ashes and dust that covered the sky slowly dissipated. The night sky regained its clarity and the light dimmed. The floating mountain, which had thousands of years of history, had collapsed and disappeared. The loss of the Du Tian sect was immeasurable. Whoosh! With a flash of white light, Ji Tianqing flew out from the ruins, stepping on the void and ascending into the sky. He held his sword and stood proudly in the night sky. His eyes were sharp like swords as he scanned his surroundings. After one look, he immediately frowned and his lips curled into a cold smile. It turned out that the earth-shattering commotion just now had alarmed the entire Du Tian sect. The dozen or so experts of the Heaven Ascension sect, as well as the injured elders who had fled, were all standing in the night sky, glaring at him like tigers watching their prey. Every powerhouse's expression and eyes were filled with hatred and anger. Their bodies were filled with murderous intent and were about to ignite into flames. The powerhouse closest to him was a middle-aged man with white hair. He had a beard that reached his chest. This person wore a golden robe and an octagonal dragon crown on his head. A broad golden sword that symbolized the aura of a king hung from his waist. His entire body emitted an earth-shattering aura. Ji Tianqing, of course, could guess that this person was the leader of these powerhouses, the Du Tian sect's current leader, Lu Feiyu. His title was the Sword Emperor of the Eastern Sea. Not far away in the night sky, the dozen or so powerhouses spread out and formed an encirclement. Among these people, there was the protector of the right who only had half of his body left, a few elders who were riddled with wounds, and 8 attendants who had reached the spirit-refining realm. A total of 12 spirit-refining realm powerhouses surrounded Ji Tianqing in the most ferocious manner. They wanted nothing more than to cut him into pieces and grind his bones to dust. However, his expression did not change. His eyes were filled with unparalleled confidence as he muttered to himself, "A secluded sect in the sea has more than a dozen spirit-refining realm powerhouses. The left and right protectors are all in the 7th level of the spirit-refining realm, and the current leader is in the 9th level of the spirit-refining realm. Such a powerful force can only be compared to the imperial court. No wonder the Du Tian sect is so arrogant." Chapter 1286. Ji Tianqing's voice was not loud, but all the experts present heard him clearly. The elders and deacons were all furious as they glared at him with fire in their eyes. If their gazes were like knives, he would have been sliced to pieces by everyone's gazes. Sect leader Lu Feiyu glared at him and said coldly, "Who are you? We have no enmity with you. Why have you barged into our sect and started a massacre?" After all, Lu Feiyu was the sword monarch of Donghai. He was only second to primordial soul sovereigns. Even though he was filled with murderous intent and wanted to kill Ji Tianqing with one strike, he was still a sect leader. Of course, he had to say a few words to show the Wantian sect's might. Most importantly, he had to figure out Ji Tianqing's identity and background. Ji Tianqing's lips curled into a cold smile as he said mockingly, "Lu Feiyu, the left guardian, 3rd elder, and Ji Wuxia followed your orders and went to the Central Plains to find me. Didn't you want to kill me to avenge Murongjing? Didn't you steal my black dragon and want to be the Wantian sect's guardian beast? Now that I've come to the Wantian sect to seek justice, you don't recognize me? What a joke." Hearing what he said, Lu Feiyu, the elders, and deacons all came to a realization. Their expressions became angrier and angrier. "So it's you, Ji Tianqing." Lu Feiyu furrowed his brows as a chilling light flashed in his eyes. A formless spiritual energy was released from his body, and it pressed down on Ji Tianqing like an avalanche. Ji Tianqing also released his spiritual energy to block Lu Feiyu's spiritual energy. The two forces were in a stalemate. Ji Tianqing was not at a disadvantage and his expression did not change. The elders and deacons were all spirit-refining realm cultivators. Of course, everyone could tell that Lu Feiyu and Ji Tianqing were fighting in secret. The two of them were in a stalemate and it was hard to tell who was the winner. Seeing this scene, everyone was filled with shock. They only felt that it was inconceivable, and they discussed secretly through voice transmission. "This kid is Ji Tianqing. The guy who destroyed the Duanmu family and went against Murongjing. This brat is actually able to withstand the sect master's divine soul pressure. This is simply unbelievable. 50 years ago, an old man who lived in seclusion in the Eastern Sea came to challenge the headmaster. That old man was at the 7th level of the spirit refinement realm and was filled with confidence. But Sect Master didn't even draw his sword. He didn't even use a single move. He only used the pressure of his divine sense to make that person spit out blood, retreat 5 steps, and flee with his tail between his legs. Ji Tianqing just killed the left protector, and now he's able to resist the Sect Master's soul pressure. Could it be that he's also at the 8th or 9th level of the soul refining realm? Isn't this too outrageous? He looks to be in his early 20s, how could he have reached the 8th level of the soul refinement realm? This kid's strength and talent have both reached an extremely terrifying level. He's a great enemy of our sect. Just as everyone was discussing, Lu Feiyu said coldly, Ji Tianqing, since you already know of our sect's foundation and power, you should know the consequences of making an enemy of our sect. No matter what your background is or what status you have in Middle State, it's useless in the Eastern Sea's returning ruins. Tonight, I will definitely kill you and use your head and blood to comfort the left protector's soul in heaven. As she spoke, Lu Feiyu held the scabbard in her left hand and the hilt in her right hand. She slowly drew the golden broadsword at her waist. This was a broadsword that was 4 feet long and as wide as a palm. It was dark gold in color, and there were 2 golden dragons carved on the hilt and scabbard. They were lifelike and lifelike. Clang! The moment the sword was unsheathed, the crisp sound of the sword rang out. An extremely sharp aura spread out, as if it was going to tear the night sky apart. Ji Tianqing stared at the golden sword and frowned slightly. He sneered and said, 9th level of the soul refinement realm strength and a superior grade soul class treasure sword. As expected of the Eastern Sea sword monarch. However, you want to kill me with just this bit of strength and means? Wishful thinking. Lu Feiyu was not angered by him. She said coldly, you're young, but you talk big. I'll show you what the sword monarch's wrath is like. As her voice fell, she waved the golden sword in her right hand and slashed out 8 dazzling white sword beams, enveloping Ji Tianqing's figure. Sword shaking the heavenly river. Swish. 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 The white sword beams lit up the dark night sky and sealed off a radius of 10,000 feet. It was like a sword prison, suppressing Ji Tianqing. He could not escape, so he could only resist. However, the power of each sword beam was extremely terrifying, reaching the peak of the soul refinement realm. The 8 sword beams slashed at the same time, enough to destroy the cities and mountains within a radius of 100 miles. Ji Tianqing did not panic in the face of danger. He calmly took out 5 soul magic swords, which danced around his body and formed a huge white sword net. The 8 white sword beams, with the power to destroy heaven and earth, crashed into the sword net, creating a series of muffled bangs. Suddenly, an invisible sound wave spread in the night sky, spreading for hundreds of miles. The huge sword beam shattered, turning into billions of white fragments, sprinkling in the night sky like a fairy scattering flowers. The night sky within a radius of 100 miles was reflected in a snow-white light. Violent waves of air rushed in all directions, blowing the elders and deacons pale. They all took a few steps back to offset the impact. Everyone stared at the scene in the night sky with wide eyes, waiting for the result of Ji Tianqing being killed in one move. Is that kid dead? The power of the sect leader's sword can shake heaven and earth and shatter the stars. That kid must be dead. Although that kid can withstand the sect leader's soul suppression, he can't withstand the sword shaking the heavenly river. Even if he doesn't die, he will be severely injured. Several elders and deacons were whispering to each other, swearing that Ji Tianqing would die without a doubt. However, Lu Feiyu's expression became more and more serious. He did not look relaxed at all. When the elders saw his reaction, they had a bad premonition. Sure enough, within the dazzling fragments of light, a handsome and valiant figure appeared, and a cold laugh was heard. Sword Emperor of East Sea. You're just a so-so. You don't deserve your reputation. As soon as he finished speaking, Ji Tianqing held the black broken sword and slashed at Lu Feiyu with all his strength. Eat my sword. As soon as the broken sword was drawn, a cold light bloomed, tearing the night sky apart. A 30-meter-long white sword beam, carrying with it the power to destroy everything, arrived in front of Lu Feiyu in an instant. At that moment, the snow-white sword light illuminated Lu Feiyu's fine details, allowing everyone to clearly see his solemn expression and astonished eyes. Obviously, not only had Ji Tianqing blocked his ultimate sword technique, but he had also performed an even more powerful sword technique, which had shocked him greatly. At the critical moment, Lu Feiyu held the golden sword in his hand horizontally, blooming with golden light, forming a golden light wall in front of him. Boom! The white sword beam hit the golden light wall hard, exploding with a thunderous sound. The golden light wall instantly collapsed into pieces. Chapter 1287. Seeing Lu Feiyu being pushed back, the powerhouses all revealed looks of shock. Everyone's eyes widened as they stared at this scene in disbelief. They couldn't help but cry out in shock. Oh my God! This kid's sword technique is so powerful. Even the headmaster couldn't block it and was pushed back 3 steps. Could it be that this kid is stronger than the headmaster? Impossible. Our eyes must be playing tricks on us. How can a young man in his 20s be stronger than the headmaster? He's only in his 20s and has the strength of a cultivator in the 9th level of the spirit realm. Did this kid start cultivating in his mother's womb? Lu Feiyu was the headmaster of the Du Tian sect and was known as the Sword Emperor of the Eastern Sea. He was the most powerful cultivator in the Du Tian sect and everyone's spiritual leader. Now, not only was he unable to suppress Ji Tianqing, he was pushed back 3 steps by Ji Tianqing. How could everyone not be shocked? Lu Feiyu's face instantly darkened. He glared at Ji Tianqing with a sharp gaze and shouted angrily, Ji Tianqing, you do have some strength. No wonder you are so arrogant and dare to behave atrociously in our sect. However, you underestimate my strength too much. Just now, I was just testing my moves. As he spoke, he formed a sword technique with his left hand and waved his dark gold broadsword with his right hand. He displayed a sword technique. Sword breaks the universe. Lu Feiyu let out a low growl and waved the sword in his hand. Instantly, 9 dazzling sword lights shot out like 9 golden dragons towards Ji Tianqing. At this moment, his expression was solemn and majestic. His robe fluttered without any wind and his entire body emitted sword intent. It was so powerful that it made people's hearts palpitate. The Sword Emperor of the Eastern Sea's strength and confidence were on full display at this moment. The 9 golden dragon-like rays of sword light seemed to have a life of their own. They exploded with extreme power and roared towards Ji Tianqing, wanting to tear him to pieces. Each ray of sword light was 1,000 meters long. Under the combined attack of the 9 rays of sword light, it was powerful enough to destroy the heavens and earth. Almost no one under the primordial spirit realm could block this attack. This was Lu Feiyu's most powerful killing move when he unleashed his full power and became one with his sword. Lu Feiyun was confident that Ji Tianqing would not be able to block this sword technique. Even if he did not die, he would be severely injured. However, Ji Tianqing was not afraid at all. His expression was still calm and composed. Just as the 9 golden sword projections were about to strike him, golden light flashed behind his back, and a pair of massive golden wings appeared out of thin air. Wings of the Golden Rock. He let out a low growl and instantly closed his wings to protect himself. Pang pang pang. The 9 golden dragon sword auras all slammed into the golden wings, creating a deafening boom that shook the heavens and earth. Ji Tianqing, who was wrapped in the golden wings, flew out without any suspense. He tumbled in the night sky and fell 10 miles away. The fragments of the sword light were wrapped up by the violent shockwaves and spread out in all directions, covering a radius of 100 miles. More than a dozen mountains within 100 miles were blasted apart and collapsed on the spot, turning into ruins and mud. The ground shook violently as if there was a super earthquake. Dense cracks appeared on the ground. All the elders and deacons were overjoyed and cheered excitedly. All hail the sect leader. He killed a powerful enemy with one sword and showed the might of our sect. I said earlier that no matter how strong that kid is, he is no match for the sect leader. In the entire world, only the primordial soul stage cultivators can fight the sect leader. However, just as everyone was cheering excitedly and praising Lu Feiyu, a golden light suddenly lit up in the night sky. Swoosh! Ji Tianqing, who had been blasted away, actually opened his golden wings and flew back in a golden ray of light. There was not a single wound on his body. His expression was calm as usual. He was safe and sound. In the blink of an eye, he flew back into the night sky. He stared at Lu Feiyu and shouted coldly, "Lu Feiyu, this is all you have. How can you be worthy of the title of Sword Emperor? What a joke." With that, he controlled the 5 soul spell swords and launched a counterattack. Soul Slash. The 5 soul spell swords expanded in the wind and turned into giant white swords that were 10 feet long. They shot through the night sky like meteors and shot towards Lu Feiyu. Lu Feiyu's figure was immediately drowned out. The night sky within 10 miles became a world of white light. It was so bright that everyone could not open their eyes. Boom, boom, boom. A deafening explosion rang through the sky and alerted the sky-defying sect that was 800 miles away. The extremely bright soul spell swords lit up half the sky, making this area seem like it was daytime. Within the dazzling white light, Lu Feiyu was hit by the soul spell swords again and again. His body trembled as he was sent flying with a pale face. Only after he retreated 10 miles away did he manage to reduce the powerful impact. He finally stabilized his footing and stopped in the night sky. Before he could say anything, he opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. He looked down and saw that his purple robe was in tatters. There were a dozen holes in it, revealing the armor underneath. If it weren't for the high-grade soul-level armor protecting him, he would have been pierced a few times. Lu Feiyu, who was so smart and domineering just a moment ago, was now in such a sorry state. He was even slightly injured. He was shocked and angry. His eyes were dyed with a layer of red and his body was burning with anger. Ji Tianqing. You damned animal, I will make sure your head is separated from your body and you die without a burial place. Following Lu Feiyu's voice, all the elders and attendants looked at him in shock. When the crowd saw his appearance clearly, they all revealed deep fear in their eyes and exclaimed in disbelief. How is this possible? The headmaster is injured. What kind of monster is that kid? How can he have such terrifying strength? Even the headmaster is no match for him. I have lived for hundreds of years and I have never heard of such a genius. This Ji Tianqing must be the #1 monster in the world. Just as all the powerhouses were shocked and dumbfounded, Lu Feiyu glanced at them angrily and scolded, "What are you waiting for? Are you watching a show?" Only then did all the powerhouses react. The Right Guardian quickly raised his arms and shouted, "Everyone, no matter how strong that bastard is, let's join forces to kill him. We will definitely eradicate him." The other elders hurriedly chimed in and shouted righteously, "The time for the honor of our sect has come. In order to avenge the Left Guardian and protect the 1,000-year foundation of our sect, let's join forces and kill that bastard here." As they shouted, more than a dozen powerhouses spread out, waving their swords and magic treasures. They used all kinds of secret skills to besiege Ji Tianqing. Lu Feiyu took the lead and rushed to Ji Tianqing. He used his secret swordsmanship and forced Ji Tianqing to retreat. More than a dozen powerhouses besieged Ji Tianqing from all directions. They released a sky full of sword shadows and magic light, which drowned Ji Tianqing's figure. Chapter 1288. To Ji Tianqing, Lu Feiyu was the biggest threat. The other dozen or so powerhouses were weaker, but he still had to be careful and not be careless. He used his golden wings to protect his body and condensed a golden mana shield to protect himself. The attacks of the elders and deacons landed on him one after another, but they were all blocked by the golden wings and the mana shield. But Lu Feiyu's attack could not be ignored. He had to block it with all his strength. Flying rainbow sword feather blade. Lu Feiyu waved his golden sword and slashed out 360 golden sword light blades. They covered Ji Tianqing like feathers falling from the sky. Ji Tianqing hurriedly waved his broken sword and slashed out 36 scorching white sword light, sealing off all directions. Bam bam bam. The sword light clashed violently in the night sky, exploding with muffled sounds and splashing light fragments everywhere. Lu Feiyu's attack was neutralized, but Ji Tianqing was knocked back 100 meters. Taking advantage of this opportunity, an elder lurked behind him and suddenly attacked. That elder held two swords and used all his strength to stab at Ji Tianqing's back. Cold light flashed on the blades, releasing an indestructible aura. Ji Tianqing sensed that something was wrong. He turned around and saw that the two swords were already in front of him, about to pierce through his mana shield. At this critical moment, he did not have time to counterattack. He opened the third eye on his forehead and released violent lightning. Kaboom! Following an earth-shattering boom, a blue lightning beam as thick as a water bucket struck that elder. That elder was caught off guard and was immediately enveloped by the lightning. His physical body was turned into charcoal, and he screamed in pain as he flew backward. As he flew backward, his charred body turned into countless pieces and dust, drifting in the night sky. His soul also fell into a state of dizziness, paralyzed by the lightning and unable to move. Ji Tianqing waved his broken sword and slashed out a cold light. It cut the white light of divine soul into pieces and killed the elder on the spot. When the experts saw this, they were filled with shock. Their eyes were filled with fear as they retreated. Lu Feiyu was so angry that his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. He shouted angrily and slashed with his sword. Thunderous sword. The speed of his sword was extremely fast, like an aurora piercing through the sky. Its power was also as strong as lightning, capable of destroying heaven and earth. Boom! In an instant, Ji Tianqing was struck by Lei Ting's sword, and he was sent tumbling away. His magic power shield was shattered on the spot, turning into fragments of golden light that scattered everywhere. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the elders and deacons immediately cast spells to besiege him, showering him with sword shadows and saber lights. Ping ping ping. Ji Tianqing was submerged in the light of the spells. He suffered the bombardment of all kinds of secret spells, and a series of muffled sounds rang out as his body trembled. When the elders and deacons saw this scene, their spirits were lifted, and their faces were filled with anticipation and excitement. That's great. He's finally injured. Everyone, let's attack together. We can't give him a chance to breathe. Take advantage of his illness and kill him. We must cut him into pieces to dispel the hatred in our hearts. However, when everyone was excited and wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to attack fiercely, a scene that stunned them appeared. In the light of the spells that filled the sky, Ji Tianqing stepped out and rushed back safe and sound. He was surrounded by all kinds of saber lights, sword shadows, flames, hurricanes, and other spells. When these spells collided with his body, they were all shaken away by him, not leaving a single trace behind. He didn't have the protection of a magic power shield, but he relied on his physical body to ignore everyone's attacks. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they would never have believed that it was true. Ji Tianqing's physical defense was so strong that he could resist everyone's spells head-on without being injured at all. Oh my God, what kind of monster is this guy? His physical body is so strong. It's comparable to a soul-level upper-grade magic treasure. He's too monstrous. If we don't get rid of him, he'll definitely be a great threat to our sect." The elders and deacons all revealed shocked expressions and retreated one after another. They attacked with all their might, but they couldn't even hurt Ji Tianqing. This was a devastating blow to their confidence. Ji Tianqing flew all the way, controlling the 5 soul-slaying swords, and using the soul-slaying swords, he attacked everyone fiercely. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The 5 soul-slaying swords lit up with a dazzling white light and transformed into thousands of white sword shadows, enveloping more than a dozen powerhouses and launching a fierce stabbing and strangling. With the continuous bang, bang, bang of muffled sounds, more than a dozen powerhouses were killed and scattered, fleeing in all directions in a sorry state. 5 colored lights burst out from the crowd. Blood splashed everywhere, and broken limbs flew out one after another. Screams of terror, howls of pain, and shouts of anger mixed together and spread out continuously. The enraged Ji Tianqing was like a prehistoric beast, charging into the crowd and starting a massacre, killing all the elders and deacons until they were thrown off their feet. His strength was unstoppable. Lu Feiyu was also inexplicably shocked. Seeing such a shocking scene, his heartbeat accelerated several times. His angry face was distorted, and his eyes were stained with dark red blood. He rushed toward Ji Tianqing with murderous intent, holding the golden sword with both hands and slashing down fiercely. Flying Dragon Slash. Damned beast, go to hell. A giant sword that was hundreds of feet long, like a dazzling golden dragon, with the power to destroy everything, suddenly slashed toward Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing was in the midst of killing in the crowd when he suddenly felt a terrible pressure coming. His face suddenly changed, and he turned to look at the sky. There was no doubt that this was the sword that Lu Feiyu had used all his strength, and it was extremely powerful. Even with his physical defenses, it was quite impossible for him to block the attack unscathed. At this critical moment, he did not hesitate to use his trump card and attack Lu Feiyu head-on. Sky-splitting sword. He held the broken sword with both hands, held his breath, and burst out with 100% of his strength, fiercely slashing out a giant golden sword that was hundreds of feet long. This was the sword that he condensed his essence, chi, and spirit, and it was also the strongest sword of oneness of heaven and man and sword. The 2 giant sword lights collided in an instant, and there was a loud boom. The deafening loud sound and the violent impact spread out in all directions, and instantly covered a radius of hundreds of miles. Those elders and deacons who had suffered heavy casualties were thrown out on the spot, and they fell on the ruins and the ground with blood all over their bodies. The 2 sword lights collapsed at the same time, exploding into light fragments that filled the sky, and the ground and the mountains below were full of holes and pits. Ji Tianqing and Lu Feiyu were sent flying at the same time, and their faces were pale as they gasped for breath. In this competition of skills, neither of them had the upper hand. Ji Tianqing was not surprised. Instead, he was a little gratified and secretly happy. I didn't think that with my strength of the 5th level soul refinement realm, I would be able to tie with Lu Feiyu, who is at the 9th level soul refinement realm. Chapter 1289. Lu Feiyu glared at Ji Tianqing with eyes that were about to pop out of their sockets. Flames of fury surged all over his body. Half of the dozen elders and deacons had been killed by Ji Tianqing. The remaining 6 powerhouses were also covered in blood and were severely injured. They had long been scared out of their wits. Even if they stayed to fight, it would be useless. They could not hurt Ji Tianqing at all. When he thought of this, Lu Feiyu unleashed 9 blazing white spiritual Dharma eyes and sent them flying in all directions. Swoosh! In the blink of an eye, the 9 spiritual Dharma eyes landed in the surrounding night sky and lit up with white light that soared into the sky. A huge white sky curtain appeared and covered an area of 60 miles, trapping him and Ji Tianqing within. This was Lu Feiyu's spiritual domain. As for the injured elders and deacons, they had already fled the battlefield and rushed to the sect 800 miles away to report the news. Within the spiritual domain, Lu Feiyu stepped into the night sky and stared at Ji Tianqing expressionlessly. His eyes were dark red, as if he was possessed. His robe was ragged and his hair was disheveled. There was still a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. He looked somewhat pathetic. However, his injuries were not serious, and his combat power was still intact. A terrifying power was still brewing in his body. Within the domain of a few dozen miles, only he and Ji Tianqing were left. He stared at Ji Tianqing and said in a cold and indifferent tone, "Ji Tianqing, I have to admit that you are the youngest and most monstrous genius I have ever seen. With your talent and strength, you can certainly look down on the entire Tianxian continent. You may even become a primordial soul supreme soon." Ji Tianqing also stopped attacking temporarily. He stood still in the night sky 1,000 feet away from him and confronted him with his sword. After hearing Lu Feiyu's words, his lips curled into a playful smile. He said, "I will definitely become a primordial soul supreme. You don't have to judge me. On the other hand, you, the sword monarch of East Sea, do not live up to your name. How disappointing. In terms of attainments in the sword Dao, you're even inferior to me." Ji Tianqing's words were like a sharp knife that pierced Lu Feiyu's heart, making him feel extremely humiliated and angry. However, to Ji Tianqing's surprise, Lu Feiyu did not retaliate in anger. He actually swallowed his anger and said in a deep voice with an expressionless face, "Ji Tianqing, now that things have come to this, it won't be good for either of us if we continue to fight. Our sect has been passed down for more than 2,000 years. Naturally, it is not as simple as it looks. We have trump cards and killer moves that you would not expect. You are known as the #1 genius of the continent. It would be a pity if you were to die here." Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and looked at him playfully. He asked, "Lu Feiyu, what do you mean? Could it be that you want to make peace?" "No, I'm not asking for peace." Lu Feiyu shook his head and said in a dignified and low voice, "We are discussing a solution that is beneficial to everyone." He, interesting. Ji Tianqing smiled and said playfully, "Then tell me, how can it be beneficial to everyone?" Lu Feiyu said proudly, "You have no enmity with our sect. It's all because of Murongzheng. However, from today onwards, our sect will not interfere in the grudge between you and Murongzheng. I can let you live and let you leave our sect alive. However, you must leave the Black Dragon behind as compensation for the lives of our sect's protectors, elders and deacons." Ji Tianqing laughed and said in a playful tone, Murongzheng is your disciple. Those protectors, elders and deacons are your subordinates. You can ignore their lives but you only want to exchange for the Black Dragon. You are indeed a sect leader. You only think about the big picture." Even a fool could hear the sarcasm in his words. Lu Feiyu's expression did not change as if he did not understand. He said calmly, "Ji Tianqing, you should know that I am not the strongest person in our sect. No matter how strong you are, you can only fight to a draw with me. If I am determined to kill you, you will not be able to leave this place alive. Your life or that Black Dragon. Choose one of the two. You decide." Ji Tianqing sneered contemptuously, "Robbers are indeed robbers. You can still speak so eloquently as if you are giving alms to others. Lu Feiyu, your shamelessness is truly admirable." Hearing this, Lu Feiyu frowned and stared at him coldly. He asked, "So, you don't agree?" "Of course." Ji Tianqing said without hesitation, "The Black Dragon is my pet. Why should I give it to you? As for the death of those protectors, elders and deacons, they only have themselves to blame. You are the same. If you know what is good for you and get out of the way, you can still save your little life. If you dare to stop me, I will make sure you die here and your soul scatter." Ji Tianqing's tone was cold and his attitude was very tough. His whole body exuded an incomparable domineering aura. Lu Feiyu's face was livid with anger. His eyes were surging with cold murderous intent. He shouted in a deep voice, "Ji Tianqing, since you refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit, don't blame me for being impolite. I will cut you into 8 pieces, extract your divine soul, and refine it into a puppet. Together with your black dragon, you will be my sex watchdog." When his voice fell, he made a gesture with both hands and performed a secret technique. He controlled the divine soul realm and launched a fierce attack on Ji Tianqing. Life-stealing soul-breaking sword formation. Following his angry shout, 3,600 rays of dark golden sword light appeared in the blazing white light curtain within a radius of 60 miles. Each ray of sword light was 30 feet long. More than 3,000 rays of sword light flew from all directions, carrying a vast amount of divine soul power. They pierced towards Ji Tianqing like a rain of arrows. Swoosh! Swoosh! In a split second, the night sky was covered by the golden sword light. Ji Tianqing's figure was also drowned in it. Lu Feiyu stood high in the sky and used all his strength to control the sword formation to strangle Ji Tianqing. He even shouted with a ferocious face, "Damn little bastard, do you really think I will let you go? Even if you hand over the black dragon, I will still turn you into ashes. Our sect has been dominating the East Sea for 3,000 years. Other than the imperial courts, we have never been afraid of any powerhouses. You dare to break into our sect and start a massacre. Even if I kill you 10 times, it will not be enough to vent my hatred." In the midst of the 3,600 golden swords, Ji Tianqing was folding his wings to protect himself. No matter how hard those golden swords tried to pierce his wings, they could not do any harm to him, even though loud bangs could be heard when they landed on his wings. However, the power of the 3,000 golden swords was endless. As long as the divine soul realm was not broken, the golden swords would always exist. He was besieged by the golden swords in the sky for about 100 breaths. He stopped defending and started to use his secret technique to launch a counterattack. God-slaying spear. He suddenly raised his left palm, and the golden mark on the back of his hand released a terrifying mysterious flame that gushed out from the center of his palm. Swoosh! Chapter 1290. Lu Feiyu didn't think that Ji Tianqing would still have the strength to fight back when he was surrounded by the soul-severing sword array. When the god-slaying spear made of flames pierced through the thousands of sword lights and arrived before him, his expression changed and he revealed a look of shock. The power of the god-slaying spear was far beyond his imagination and filled his heart with fear. Is this really a technique that a soul-refining realm cultivator can use? At that moment, this thought flashed through his mind and a sense of fear rose from the depths of his soul. But he was worthy of being a sect leader and a 9th-layer soul-refining realm cultivator. Even in the face of death, he didn't panic. Without hesitation, he took out a golden disc and poured his spiritual energy into it. The disc expanded to 3 feet wide and blocked in front of him. This was an ancient-looking disc with ancient patterns and characters carved on it. The edges were damaged and worn. This object was clearly an antique with thousands of years of history and it exuded an incomparably heavy aura. This was one of the treasures of the Du Tian sect, a top-quality soul artifact passed down from the ancient era, the 7 profound heavenly disc. More than 2,000 years ago, the founder of the Du Tian sect used this 7 profound heavenly disc to defeat many powerful cultivators in the East Sea. He captured many powerful demons and made a name for himself. This was a treasure that was second only to a divine artifact. It could suppress the fate of a sect and protect billions of people. In the hands of a powerhouse like Lu Feiyu, this 7 profound heavenly disc could change the layout of mountains and rivers and the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. It had the power to control heaven and earth and communicate with the sun, moon, and stars. But that was under normal circumstances. Lu Feiyu had to spend a lot of spiritual energy and years to set up an array to achieve this effect. At this moment, he was already at a critical moment of life and death, so he was unable to utilize any of its profound effects. He could only use the 7 profound heavenly disc to block in front of him and hope that this treasure's strong defense could stop the god-slaying spear. Boom! With a deafening explosion, the god-slaying spear hit the 7 profound heavenly disc. At that moment, golden light filled the sky and illuminated the entire soul domain. It was dazzling and bright. The unparalleled impact caused the simple and crude 7 profound heavenly plate to shatter into pieces. The deicide spear also collapsed and shattered, turning into a sky-reaching scarlet flame that surged like a giant wave, spreading out in all directions. Violent shockwaves mixed with the golden fragments of the Tian Pan spread out in all directions, hitting the soul realm with a series of whooshing sounds. Lu Feiyu's divine soul domain was immediately bombarded until it was on the verge of collapse. Cracks also appeared on the blinding white light curtain, which was making cracking noises. Lu Feiyu's spiritual domain was on the verge of shattering, and her spiritual soul was also severely injured. Her face immediately turned pale, and a stream of blood spurted out of her mouth. My 7 profound heavenly plate was actually defeated. Lu Feiyu widened her eyes in shock. She looked at the fragments in the sky in disbelief and was dumbfounded. He simply could not believe that Ji Tianqing was only at the 5th level of the soul refinement realm and could actually shatter a top-grade soul artifact, the 7 profound heavenly plate, in one move. This was simply a miracle. Lu Feiyu's confidence also collapsed along with the 7 profound heavenly plate. He even started to suspect whether this white-robed youth in front of him was an Essence Soul Supreme in disguise. If not an Essence Soul Supreme powerhouse, who could break a top-grade soul artifact in one move? At this time, Ji Tianqing had already come back to his senses. He rushed out of the golden light and flames that filled the sky. Holding the broken sword with both hands, he fiercely slashed out 9,000 feet long sword lights, hacking at the surrounding blinding white light curtain. Bang! 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 A series of muffled sounds exploded. The blinding white light curtain that covered the sky was on the verge of collapse, and the cracks widened further. Lu Feiyu was shocked and furious. He could only forcefully endure his injuries, suppress the shock and disbelief in his heart, and hurriedly cast a spell to stabilize his divine soul domain. The reason why he used his divine soul domain to trap Ji Tianqing and even pretended to seek peace with Ji Tianqing was to stall for time. After all, the Grand Elder had always been in closed-door cultivation and had not shown his face for decades. He had to buy enough time for the elders and deacons to knock on the Grand Elder's door and awaken him. Seeing that his divine soul domain was about to shatter, how could he not be anxious? Little bastard, don't even think about escaping. Lu Feiyu roared. He did not hesitate to sacrifice 20 years of cultivation to release monstrous dermic powers into his divine soul domain. His 9 divine soul dharma eyes also spun rapidly, dazzling like small suns, quickly repairing his divine soul domain. Ji Tianqing had already seen through his intentions. Seeing that the cracks in his divine soul domain were quickly repairing, he immediately sneered with a sinister expression. Lu Feiyu, you want to trap me with just you? Wishful thinking. As he said that, he held the broken sword with both hands and used all his dermic powers to stab at the white light barrier beside him. He deeply understood the principle that it was better to attack more forcefully than to destroy one side. The broken sword released a cold light that was condensed to the extreme, instantly piercing through the sky and smashing into the barrier in the distance. Bam! With a deafening explosion, the cold light suddenly bloomed and instantly turned into a huge ball of blazing white light, as dazzling as the sun. The white light barrier was blown into a hole with a radius of thousands of feet. The dark night sky outside the domain could be clearly seen. Earth-shattering sound waves, violent and terrifying shock waves, and countless fragments of white light were wantonly splashing in the night sky. Cracks began to appear all around the hole, and they quickly began to spread. The divine soul domain could not withstand it any longer and completely collapsed. Bam! Another muffled explosion sounded. The blazing white light barrier that covered an area of 60 miles shattered into white light fragments and scattered in the night sky, quickly dissipating. Lu Feiyu's divine soul suffered a backlash. Suddenly, his body shook violently and blood spurted out from his mouth and nose. His body was as stiff as a rock. He fell straight from the night sky and smashed into the ground with a plop. The battle was temporarily over. The white light, sound waves, and hurricanes that filled the night sky howled for a long time before dissipating. 10 breaths later, when the night sky gradually became clear again, Ji Tianqing's figure appeared. He appeared in the night sky safe and sound, stepping on the void, holding the broken sword in his hand and looking down at the earth below with sharp eyes. The ground within 100 miles had long been turned into ruins, full of cracks and big pits. Lu Feiyu was in a big pit, struggling to get out of the pile of dirt. He used his qi to shake off the dust on his body and stood up shakily. His clothes were ragged, his hair was disheveled, and his face and chest were stained with blood. He looked very miserable. Seeing him like this, Ji Tianqing shouted expressionlessly in a low voice, "Sword Emperor of Dong Hai, a loser. You have disgraced the name of the Sword Emperor. Die." After that, he rushed down from the sky toward Lu Feiyu and slashed down with his sword. But at this moment, in the night sky 10 miles away, a bright golden light suddenly lit up, like a meteor streaking across the night sky, speeding over. Before the golden light arrived, a thunderous roar exploded above Ji Tianqing's head. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.